Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to call the November 29th meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education to order. I realize that we have people standing up, and I apologize for that, but that may be temporary because typically after we do our recognitions, we have a mass exodus. So if you don't want to stand up, we do have a room over here that's called the first floor conference room if you'd like to sit down temporarily. But recognitions are toward the top of the agenda. You're welcome to do whichever you prefer. So thank you for being here this evening. And prior to this meeting tonight, we had several work sessions. We did a work session on the Schools of Innovation, the Equity Scorecard, and the 2017 legislative agenda. At this meeting tonight, you will notice that Board Chair Jones is not here this evening. He will join us for the December meeting, and Board Member Hadaway was attempting to get here but has not made it at this point. So currently we have two board members that are not here today. But again, Chair Jones plans to be at the December meeting, and we look forward to seeing him. Also, I would like to say that there's been some confusion tonight about some things that perhaps were thought to be on the agenda that are not. And I talked with a group of constituents earlier in the lobby area about an item that they thought would be on the agenda about sex education that is not on the agenda tonight. I've got a couple of contact email addresses from folks, and so we're going to stay in touch with them to make sure that we get it right and that whatever is to come to us will get on the agenda. We also have another group that came tonight because they thought that they were under recognitions, and an email was sent to the board about an agreement, but it's not on the agenda. So as the vice chair, I guess I have to say I apologize for that, and I will take responsibility for it. But Dr. Harkins is going to speak to that in her superintendent's remarks. It's not an attempt to not do it. It's a miscommunication. So as we go forward tonight, one of the things that I said when Board Chair Jones was going to be out for an extended period of time, I said that it was my job to go forward with the business of the board. And I also said if I'm not doing my job to tell me. So after the last meeting, I got some feedback about how we were doing our business. And were we doing our business as efficiently and effectively and as compassionately as we possibly could? So I listened to every email, I listened to every remark. Anybody that knows me in my 39 years as a teacher and a counselor, assistant principal and director for this district knows that I think everybody should be treated with fairness. We don't have to agree, but we can disagree respectfully. So I am going to say tonight that I am making every effort to conduct the business of this board in a professional manner. I expect you to help me with that. I expect our general counsel to call me on things that are not going the way they're supposed to, because words matter. If they matter for children, they absolutely matter for adults. So I asked your help, I asked your indulgence, as we get about the business of what's good for the students of the Jefferson County Public Schools. I thank everyone for being here tonight. I usually don't go on and on, but you got it. So, and I don't apologize for that, because it's important that we have a professional culture in order to do our work. I will also say that we have two newly elected board members. I do not see them in the audience tonight. Oh, I'm sorry. Benjamin Geese, would you please stand up so we can recognize you? I apologize. He's newly elected to the board. Part of the process is that we will have an orientation for our newly elected board members, and we will get that done before 2017. Also, they are invited to go to the Kentucky School Board Association conference, where they have what's called boot camp for new board members. So we are trying to get them ready for the task that is before them. So having said that, no, I did say that no action was taken at the work session. At this time, I would ask that we have just had the season of Thanksgiving, but really this is the whole season of Thanksgiving as we move from Thanksgiving to the other holidays. As we take our moment of silence, would you take something that in your mind and in your heart that's important to you, and hold on to that thought, whether it's our children, our adults, or our personal lives. And let's have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Board Member Chris Brady will read our vision statement.
Thank you, Vice Chair. JCPS's vision statement: all Jefferson County Public School students graduate prepared, empowered, and inspired to reach their full potential and contribute as thoughtful, responsible citizens of our diverse, shared world.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to introduce Terry Robinson, who will do our recognitions and resolutions. And I also will point out that Ms. Robinson is sitting down. We no longer have the podium as part of our presentation, so if you're here to speak tonight, we would ask that you would join us at the table when you're a speaker. If you have something to distribute to the board, we would ask that you hand it to Angie Gilpin, our Assistant Board Secretary, and she will see to it that we get it. So something a little different and new tonight. Ms. Robinson, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hargens, Board Vice Chair Diane Porter, and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education. This evening, we begin with the recognition of Eastern High School students Elijah Brazil, Michael Bennett, Miles Dill, Emily Drunkenmiller, Rachel Hastings, Joseph Humphrey, Michael Lindsay, Brendan Quirk, Nathan Rummel, Ryan Scanlon, Austin Stevens, and Sydney Williams, who are among the top business students nationwide who have earned top scores on various sections of the High School of Business exam. The High School of Business is a national accelerated business administration program designed to prepare students to excel in rigorous college-level business administration programs and to prepare them to be great leaders who are college and career ready and promotable in the world of business. Board Member Stephanie Horn and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Glenn Beatty, please come forward to congratulate these outstanding students. Joining in the recognition is their teacher, Jody Charleston, and Principal Lana Kalin. Students, please come forward. I would like to ask that all the parents of these outstanding students to please stand to be recognized. Thank you. Next, we have the honor of recognizing Shane Lowe, a student at the Kentucky School for the Blind and Central High School Magnet Career Academy, Brendan Quirk, a student at Eastern High School, Allison Tu, a student at DuPont Manual High School, and Kaylee Riggs, a student at Seneca High School, who are 4 of 16 Kentucky students who have been named to serve on the Commissioner of Education Student Advisory Council. They will meet with the Commissioner and Kentucky Department of Education staff to talk about how decisions made are affecting public school students in the state and to provide important feedback from a student perspective on critical issues impacting Kentucky schools and students. Vice Chair Diane Porter and Board Member Stephanie Horn, and Assistant Superintendents Joe Lefford, Brad Weston, and Dr. Glenn Beatty, please come forward to congratulate these outstanding students. Joining in the recognitions are their principals, Raymond Green, Jerry Mays, Lana Kalin, and Assistant Principal, Norika Dixon. Will the parents of these outstanding students please stand to be recognized? Thank you. We are very proud to recognize Angela Harris for receiving the 2016 Ann S. Booth Mathematics Education Service and Achievement Award presented by the Kentucky Council of Teachers of Mathematics. The award recognizes outstanding mathematics teachers, education professionals, and business and community leaders who have made significant contributions to and supported mathematics education. Board Vice Chair Diane Porter, Assistant Superintendent Karen Branham, and Professional Development Coordinator Tara Isaacs. Please come forward to extend congratulations to Angela for her outstanding professional accomplishment. We are honored to recognize Autumn Garrity, who is one of 3 finalists for the 2016 Special Education Teacher of the Year Award. The award is one of the highest honors presented to Kentucky's teachers of students with disabilities. Autumn began her teaching career as a functional mental disability teacher at Fairdale High School. She has also served as a Special Olympics coach for basketball and cheerleading, and has helped develop a peer tutoring program for high school juniors and seniors, some of whom are serving as teachers. At Aaron, Autumn works with students ages 18 to 21, connecting them with employers, social contacts, and community resources to help them transition to post-school adult life. Board Vice Chair Diane Porter, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Alicia Everett, and Administrator Jackie June, please come forward to congratulate Autumn. Finally, it is our honor and privilege to recognize Dr. John Marshall, Chief Equity Officer, for receiving the Louisville Defender Newspaper Outstanding Professional Achievement Recognition Award. Last month, he was formally recognized during the Defender's Business and Professional Achievement Recognition Luncheon. He is among 16 achievers who won awards in various categories. Recently, Dr. Marshall also received the Spirit of Alpha Award presented by Alpha Phi Alpha for his dedication to academic excellence while providing services and advocacy for communities. Vice Chair Diane Porter and Dr. Hargens, please come forward to extend congratulations to Dr. Marshall. Dr. Hargens and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education, this concludes our recognitions for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. At this point, we would like to congratulate our students, staff, everyone that has received recognitions tonight. And before I dismiss, I would like to get a motion from the board to approve the recognitions for this evening. Mr. Brady, second by Dr. Wilner. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. So at this point, if there's no homework, just go home and have a good time. Keep doing good work. Thank you so much for being here. We'll allow a few minutes for you to leave. Thank you.
Maybe that's what we need to do. Okay.
For the meeting.
Gotcha. Yeah, I thought it. That's fine. That's fine. Maybe figure it out. It's too far back. It should be pulled up. They normally pull it up to right there. Yeah.
I just think it adds to the agenda. It's your choice. I'm sorry, I did not get an idea about adding.
Help your presence.
I'll watch it.
Okay, I think we have seating for as many seats as we have. Again, we have an overflow room, first floor conference room. If anyone would like to have a seat there, or you are welcome to stand as long as we're not exceeding our limit. If we're exceeding our limit, our security folks will come in and let us know that we have too many people in the room. Thank you so much. At this point, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to approve the meeting agenda for tonight. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda for tonight? Mr. Brady, motion, second. Dr. Wilner, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is to vote to approve the minutes of the November 15th special meeting. which was at PRP High School. Before we approve those, I would like to say thank you again to PRP High School and Greenwood Elementary for hosting us. It was a wonderful meeting. So is there a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting? Mr. Brady, second. Ms. Duncan, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Dr. Hargens, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chair Porter. As Ms. Porter said, I'd like to address first the miscommunication, which we all apologize for. We want to tell our colleagues at AFSCME that there was a miscommunication about what you thought was going to be an agenda item, which we thought was going to be a speaker speaking about welcoming the child nutrition workers into AFSCME. So what I will do is take personal responsibility to contact Bo Johnson and Ms. Garcia early next week to figure out what the miscommunication was and to make sure that we proceed appropriately. So again, we apologize, but the board gets materials early, gets the chance to look at materials, gets the chance to consider things, and it's really not fair to put something on that everybody didn't understand what they were considering. So again, we apologize. And Ms. Porter, I don't know if you want to give the opportunity to pause and let any members that are here for that purpose to also have the opportunity to leave so that we don't, and we will, again, I will contact you next week before the December 13th meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Again, we apologize. So Vice Chair Porter and members of the board, I'm going to present the superintendent's report. First, I would like to thank Ken Moeller and the Phoenix School of Discovery faculty and staff for hosting our Listen and Learn series meeting today before the work session started. These meetings, again, we have 11 schools that have been randomly selected, are an opportunity for Cabinet to sit with school faculties and have two-way communication to really receive feedback from them about how we can best support them and support our students and our schools. So thank you again to Ken Moeller and the Phoenix staff. On Wednesday afternoon, November 23rd, right before Thanksgiving, I attended with Mayor Fisher a dialogue with members of our international community that was called impromptu at Louisville Metro Hall. The purpose, again, is to ensure proactive and two-way open communication. We discussed the need for more, certainly for more opportunities and exchanged contact information so that we can, again, make each other aware of any issues that might arise in the community. So I appreciated that opportunity. I want to do a shout out to a JCPS team that attended the 20th annual Quest Conference in Toronto, Canada. The JCPS team that attended included Dr. Lisa Herring, Tom Hudson, Brent McKim, Serena Sampson, and Alan Young. This was a collaborative venture with JCTA, who actually paid the conference traveling expenses of the 3 individuals of the team. So again, we're working to understand the work of Michael Fullen in the book Coherence, and this was a conference that really included a lot of that work. So thank you for that representative team for going to the conference in Toronto. I also want to acknowledge when we were having our last board meeting, we had a team of people, and I know Dr. Wilner is going to talk about it more in her report, the by all means convening of 6 districts at Harvard in Massachusetts. So Dr. Wilner was there, Dr. Herring, Dr. Chang, and Jonathan Lowe. Have I missed anybody? Along with members of Metro government. And it really is a convening about how we can really create and design systems that support all students. So just an announcement about, just to keep you all up to date, the second pay period ending 11/18, there were 849 bus drivers and special needs transportation assistants that qualified for the perfect attendance bonus. And all routes during that time period, correct, Dr. Razor, were covered.
Yes, ma'am.
So we appreciate everyone, and certainly are getting our students to school. We know that time spent on learning is critical. So the board has asked me at every meeting to report how are we doing in terms of attendance, both student and staff, and also discipline. So I'm going to show you that. This is our dashboard. So you can see that average daily attendance for students is about the same as it was last year, as well as staff. We are seeing unexcused absences, an increase from this time of last year. We are also seeing, you can see to the right, behavior incidences, which we expected because we're recording everything in the system. And suspensions are up as well. And we have a team of people that's looking at that data. I see that the middle part, Dr. Dossett is populating, or are we just putting that information in there? Okay, so out of the filled positions that we have filled on the good side, we do know that we have some vacant positions, 97.5, and you can see the efficiency rate. So if we go back to there, you can see a breakdown of those positions. Some of the new positions are added for early childhood, exceptional children support, and also ESL, English as a second language. And we have 10 positions that were vacant from the beginning of the year, but that's the total number of positions. So as the board knows, the dashboard then breaks down each category. This is staff attendance, so you can see last year to this year. This is student attendance, behavior occurrences, and again, we're recording everything, so we expected that to go up. So really, Vice Chair Porter, I'm recommending for approval the consent agenda later in this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hargens. There were a couple of things that I forgot to say earlier. First of all, Dr. Wilner made us aware of information from the National School Board Association, which is asking districts to consider a call to action about making our schools' values known. And it says, we come together as a national education organization in the wake of the troubling rash of reports of bias, incidents, and violence occurring in schools across the nation in recent days. So we took that information, and Allison Martin and Jonathan Lowe are working on that, and they're going to bring a resolution back to this board in December that this board will have an opportunity to accept. So thank you for making us aware of the information from the National School Board Association.
Can I just say that Ms. Horn also brought that information forward? So.
Okay. Ms. Horn, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wilner, for bringing the information forward. Thank you very much. Also, it is necessary that I make a motion to excuse the absence for Board Chairperson David Jones for not attending this meeting. We've done that for every meeting that he's missed, so I will make the motion to excuse it. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Brady, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So as we move on with the agenda, there are no speakers on the action item. The first action item is the approved to add new optional magnet programs for the 2017-18 school year. So Dr. Hargens, if you would introduce that, and the appropriate folks come up to talk to us about it, please.
Thank you. Actually, just to give it a little bit of context, you know that we've had a magnet review steering committee, and one of the things that was worked on through that process was to really codify and create a process when there's an idea for a magnet school or an optional program, how it comes through a process that is looked at, and Dr. Branham and Dr. Herring are going to describe the process. So, and also what we're recommending to the board for approval and why. And then there's another school that's requested to eliminate their magnet program. So again, we're going to quickly describe the process, our recommendations, and then also the recommendation to accept the SBDM's request to eliminate the magnet program. So Dr. Herring or Dr. Branham.
So good evening. Excuse me, good evening, Superintendent Hargens, Board Vice Chair Porter, and of course members of the JCPS School Board. Thank you for the opportunity to present this item. As many of you are aware, our JCPS schools were desirous of exploring magnet options in the past year. And the magnet application process has evolved from a transition that was emerging from the ground up within our schools. As a result, this evening, Ms. Branham will highlight the timeline regarding the evolution of the process that started back in May 2016. This evening, we will briefly highlight what has evolved to adjustments for 4 existing schools. To that end, we are bringing recommendations that we are requesting to go forward, and of course, Kane Run's request for a removal. For the board's consideration, as a reminder, the charge from the board was to move forward back in May with the magnet application process. It is closely tied, intimately tied to Vision 2020, and specifically aligned to Strategy 2.1.1, Personalized Deeper Learning, which states to personalize instruction through magnet programs to engage students in deeper learning aligned with the curriculum. At this time, Ms. Branham will talk us through the process, and we will be glad to entertain any questions after her sharing.
Thank you. So tonight, I'm very excited to share with you an overview of the process, as well as 4 exciting magnets that we're bringing forward for your approval. Back in May, the board will remember that during one of our work sessions, the Magnet Steering Committee shared the magnet application process, as well as a copy of the new magnet application itself with the board. Also at that time, the Magnet Steering Committee approved that application and the process. So moving forward in July, we met with all principals being invited to a meeting to hear about the new application process and to review that process with principals. During that meeting, Kathy McGinnis, my colleague and Options and Magnets coordinator, and I reviewed the process with the principals and then opened the session to questions and answers from any principals. After that face-to-face session, the new application process and materials were shared with principals in multiple Friday principal emails from the superintendent's office. At that time, principals, schools, and community partners started the exciting work of working in tandem to develop various magnet applications for your consideration for the 2017-18 school year. During the process, Kathy McGinnis served as technical support to principals and schools to assist with this new online comprehensive magnet application process. A deadline was set for September 30th, and all magnet applications were due at that time to the Options and Magnets office. Once those magnet applications were submitted, each application went through a 3-step process as identified and agreed upon and approved by the Magnet Steering Committee. The first step being that we developed a cross-departmental district team that reviewed each magnet application. The second step was review and consideration by the superintendent's cabinet. And then tonight, the final step, which is submission to the Board of Education for your consideration and approval per board policy. So to go a little bit more in depth with the cross-departmental team, I'll share with you that during that portion of the process, the team reviewed and actually scored each magnet application using a scoring rubric. During that time, the principal was invited to meet with that team as well as other school members wanting to come forward and share the magnet application, during which conversation and questions around each application occurred. That cross-departmental team consisted of representatives from almost every division in the district. The Options and Magnets office, of course, data management and research, student assignment, transportation, diversity, equity, and poverty, demographics, finance, college and career readiness, and of course the academic team. Then, per the scoring rubric and the consensus of that cross-departmental team, some of the applications moved forward to the second phase of the process, which was reviewed by the superintendent's cabinet. During that second phase, the superintendent's cabinet members met again with the principal or other school team members for conversation and questions around each magnet application. If the superintendent's cabinet approved the application to move forward for the third step, which of course is for your review this evening. So in total this year, with this new comprehensive process and application phase, we had a total of 9 applications that were submitted by September 30th to meet the deadline, and tonight we're here to share with you for your consideration 4 magnet applications. The first from Brandeis Elementary, which is a STEAM magnet theme. Of course, Principal Shervita West, Olmsted North Middle School, Principal Ryan Radosky, and they also submitted a STEAM application. Central High School, under the guidance and direction of Principal Raymond Green, submitted a Montessori magnet for the high school level. And then finally, YPAS, under the guidance and direction of Principal Jerry Mays, submitted a guitar magnet application. And so we bring those forward for you tonight for your consideration.
Thank you so much, and I think that at another time, another place for a work session, I think board members are interested in knowing the specifics of what the magnets will look like. But for this event, thank you for explaining what we're doing, and thank you very much for explaining the process to us, the different steps that it has gone through. And I think some of the principals are in fact in the room this evening, so I would like to recognize, I know Principal Raymond Green is here from Central High School, Principal Jerry Mays is here from Manual. I'm not sure that I saw, if you would just wave your hands up, Brandeis is here, okay, and, okay, just kind of wave your hands so we can give you a big shout out and applause. Thank you for your work. Are there questions from the board of Dr. Wilner? Ms. Duncan?
I'm thinking.
Ms. Duncan?
No, this really took me sort of by surprise, because I was under the impression from the May presentation that we were going to be talking about magnets that had to do with some kind of career connection, that was it was going to be developing magnets that had that career relationship. So this is, when I see what we have, it's not like that. And I know this is the first round of these to come through the process, but I'm kind of curious. I mean, usually a magnet is designed to attract people to the school. You think of an area that will be appealing to a broad group of people across the district, or if that's what it is, or within the area. But we usually think of how it's going to attract. And I look at Brandeis and Central and YPAS especially, and I mean, even Olmsted North is pretty, we've got a pretty good sized population there. And so I'm wondering, if we attract even more, are we to schools that maybe don't need more? I don't know. It just seems kind of an odd thing to be proposed from these schools. So I wish somebody could give me some explanation, some context about the Montessori magnet at Central, and why Central thinks this is something appropriate for Central.
So I'll start and just share with you that one of the things the Magnet and Options Office is looking at is also articulation across K-12. And so we have several elementary schools that offer Montessori. We also, of course, have our middle school at Westport that offers a Montessori program. And so with this Montessori magnet at Central High School, it really completes that articulation process from K-12. So for students that are engaged and participating in a Montessori magnet at the elementary and middle school levels, now they have the opportunity to engage in that similar magnet theme and process. And in this case, Montessori is really a means of instructional practice with students. And so for students that were able to engage in a deeper learning process through the Montessori magnet, now they have that opportunity at the high school level. So I agree with you. We're looking at how can we connect things to, in many cases, a college and career pathway. And of course, Christy Rogers is working on a lot of that work through her office. But also in the magnet office, we're also looking at articulation across elementary, middle, and high school. And so I would say that's one of the real strengths of Central High School bringing forward the Montessori magnet application.
And the common denominator between these schools are they all are existing magnet schools or have programs. So for Olmsted North and for Brandeis, it's refining by adding the A of STEAM, right, and adding that program. For Central, it's adding yet another theme and an opportunity for students. They're 100% magnet. And for YPAS, which we agree is a very successful magnet school, it's adding guitar. So it's really enhancing, and they would like to formally be able to say that's part of their magnet when they're talking about their magnet. So there is, Dr. Branham, the schools did not ask for, there's no cost associated with these
correct.
requests. So
That's correct.
they're not asking for money from the district.
No.
They're asking for the flexibility to refine their theme.
And spacing has all been considered, and I'm sure there's room
Yes.
for the programs within here.
Yes, and I'm glad you said that, Ms. Duncan, and that's really a key reason why we had representatives from other divisions, like operations, like our building and facilities, so that they could represent and make sure that we were considering all of those aspects as we consider the magnet application.
One of the things that I keep remembering is our Magnet Schools of America recommendations, and I mean, we've tried to use them to guide us through the guidelines for magnet school, or for our new guidelines for magnet programs. And one of the recommendations was that they change Olmsted North to a traditional school. So, you know, I'm thinking that would be considered somewhere in here. Was that considered, or was that just put aside and thought that this other would be more appropriate?
I really cannot respond to that. I don't know if Olmsted North considered that or not. I can tell you it has not been discussed by the Magnet Steering Committee.
Okay.
So we can definitely find out some more information
So
for
the
you.
committee actually reviewed what the application brought forward, and that came from the school. So that was what that school brought forward.
Yes.
And they already, I know, are the S and the T and the M part. They do a lot of work in that, and the arts. They also have the arts, a very strong arts program there with their musical program. So, I mean, I can see this is a natural step, and I appreciate that. It's just I want to make sure that we're doing things that also are helping our career pathways to help kids move. And I think, I mean, the schools, you all have vetted this, so I assume that's been talked about, and these will be treated as things that will help our career pathways, or help kids decide career pathways. But it just, these recommendations were kind of a surprise for me, and so I just, we're all trying to, I think, because we were not involved in any of this, and we're just trying to absorb the benefits of this, and what kind of precedent this sets then for the next magnets that are asked, or that are recommended. Thank you, though.
I want to go back and emphasize the fact that we will have a work session. I don't want to call the principals up and ask them to start describing their programs, because that will extend the work that we have to do for tonight. And when we have the work session, these specific questions can be asked. But there is a process, and the process was, you know, I appreciate you explaining it to us. In another time, in another life, I was a part of that process, so thank you for explaining it to us, and the inclusiveness of staff before the recommendation comes to the board. And having said that, Ms. Horn had something, and then I'll go back to Dr. Wilner if she has something.
Well, I just want to say I'm very excited about the Montessori program at Central, because I do think it does complete that, the path from elementary to middle to high school. So Westport is in my district, and we're very excited about it. I wonder, though, not as much for Central, but for Manual and Brandeis, because those are of a lot of constituents that really love those schools and want to go, but there aren't enough seats. So I know I have talked to Dr. Green about Central. I feel confident that that has been totally, vetted. So, I know, but I don't know as much because it's like Linda's saying, I don't know as much. Will this be taking away seats from the Youth Performing Arts Center school for other specialties or for like Brandeis? It seems like it's just an addition. It's STEAM versus math, science, technology. It seems that may not be a difference in seats, but wonder about the manual. Just a question out there. You can kind of table it, but that's, you know what I mean? I wonder about that. And then the arts integration, I love the STEAM idea for both of, the middle school, for Olmsted North and Brandeis, but I do think that music and arts integration, I know there's a program at Brandeis where it's, working with U of L, they really do a lot of that where the regular classroom teachers are really integrating it, but that does take money if you really want to expand on the arts with the science, technology, engineering, and math. It does take, a dedicated arts instructor. So I wonder, is money, when we create magnet schools, it's got to be real. Like, I'm glad there's no funding, differential here, but I want to make sure that Brandeis is supported in their arts. That they can have an arts instructor, a dedicated full-time arts instructor, to make sure that that'd be something I'd be looking for. So.
And we can definitely check into that. I believe that they do, but we can get back with you and make sure.
Let me quickly. They have an art instructor.
Like use it, to make sure it's all. They really can have a really vibrant to make sure it's enough.
And I know that the principal at Brandeis has been thinking about adding the A for the STEM for at least 2 years. So this is not an overnight impulse. And as it pertains to the guitar program at YPAS, there is an interest there. So they're trying to offer something for the interest that has been expressed at the school. Those 2 particular schools I can speak to because they are in my district. Dr. Wilner.
I want to mostly just, this is exciting, and I want to express appreciation for the process. When I first came on the board, we didn't really have a process in place, and the Magnet Schools of America review had taken place, and kind of had to put the brakes on and go all the way back to the drawing board when things had kind of skipped over the process. And so I just, I know it's been tremendous community involvement, frequent reports back to the board about this magnet review process, and I just, it's kind of nice to see it come full circle, having gone through the entire vetting process, all the different areas coming together to make these recommendations. So, as a board member who's not involved in the day-to-day work of the district, really have to rely on good process by the folks doing the work. So I just want to really express appreciation for that. So thank you.
Mr. Brady.
Thank you. So let me preference this by saying I'm looking at these magnet themes, and I'm looking at these, and I'm very appreciative of these, and I think generally supportive of these particular themes and programs. However, I'm concerned about process and precedent. And what I see here is that I'm being asked to, as a board member, to do my due diligence and approve a magnet school application. But yet, I don't see an application here. I see the description of a process, that's the board materials that I've been given, but I don't see any details other than under magnet theme, and it has the word or, actually the word or acronym of their theme. I don't think as a board member I can really do my due diligence and vote with, within the information that I should have based on the lack of information I have here. Now, let me say also that I don't feel that this is a failure of process on the magnet school review process. I think this is a failure of process of getting adequate information to the board for them to make an informed decision. without the information, I'm unable to make an informed decision. I'm supportive of, let's say, Montessori for Central High School. I mean, it sits right across the street from Coleridge Taylor, which is a Montessori elementary school. That's great. And they'll augment what's going on at Westport. And I'm supportive of that. And so I would love to be able to vote for this, but I can't make an informed vote if I don't have the information. And the failure of process at this point is I don't have the information.
Okay, at this point, I will call for the vote. Is there a motion to approve the new optional magnet programs for the 2017-18 school year? Is there a motion to do that? Mr. Brady, a second. Ms. Duncan, all those in favor? Ms. Horn, Porter, Dr. Wilner, Ms. Duncan, all those opposed? Opposed? No vote? Abstaining? Mr. Brady abstains. Thank you. The motion passes. The next item is the Cane Run Elementary School. And at Cane Run, we're voting to remove the magnet status from Cane Run Elementary. Is there additional information that we need to hear about that? Or
The only thing I'll share is that probably the two most important things we look at in an effective magnet program is, number one, is the magnet being magnetic? And number two, is it improving student achievement? So as Principal Kim Coslow met with her leadership team, with her assistant superintendent, Dr. Glenn Beatty, with her SBDM council, those things were discussed, and they reached consensus that they would like to opt out of their magnet theme at this point in time.
okay, and I think we had this information previously, but we needed it to be passed by the SBDM committee, so we have done all the due diligence that we're supposed to do before we make this recommendation. So is there a motion to remove the magnet status from, I'm sorry, Ms. Duncan?
Yeah, I have a question. Does this mean that the school's no longer offering the program, or that it's not offering it to people outside of the school?
It means they will no longer offer the program. It will no longer be a magnet.
Then, okay.
And again, this is the school's request
Yes.
approved by the SBDM.
Yes.
Is there a motion? Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Horn makes the motion. Is there a second? Mr. Brady? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank
We're
you.
going to move on now to the information items. There are no information items, so we're going to move to the consent calendar items. And there are several items to be pulled down, but we have two speakers. I will go over what is being pulled down, but I will also recognize the speakers before we pull each item down separately. The items that have been asked to be pulled down are item C, this approval of job descriptions by Ms. Duncan, the approval of bid tabulations and contract renewals, Ms. Duncan, Dr. Wilner, Board Member Brady, the approval of the regular board meeting schedule for 2017, Board Member Brady, Board Member Duncan, amendment of board policies, hiring certified and hiring classified, first reading, Board Member Duncan and Board Member Brady. So those are the items that I have been told that would be pulled down this evening. Having said, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, was item M in there? Okay, I'm used to hearing the letters for those items.
Item M,
Okay.
the approval of bid tabulations and contract renewals. Okay, we are ready to do the speakers first before we start discussing any of these items. And there are 3 speakers on the items from the consent calendar. And before I call the speakers down, I have a little speech that I'm supposed to read about the speakers. So just bear with me because it's important that I read the speech. And because I can't find the speech, I'm getting ready to make it up. No, I'm not. I promise. So each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to address the board. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a bell will sound once. You will then have 30 seconds to finish your statement. At the end of 3 minutes, the bell will sound twice, indicating that your time is up. The superintendent will look into the speaker's issues and, if necessary, represent the board in following up on recommended action to the board. And there are no opportunities to make a complaint or allegation against an individual staff member. That is not allowed at this meeting. And we have asked that names not be called. We don't do personnel at this meeting. So having said that, there are 3 speakers. We are happy to have you this evening. Again, the process is you will be seated at the table. If there's something that you want us to have, you are to give it to Angie Gilpin, and she will see that we have it. So thank you very much for being here this evening. And our first speaker is Aldwin Helton, and he is speaking on the item L, the approval of bid tabulations and contract renewals. Welcome, Mr. Helton. Thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening. My name is Aldwin Helton. I am a local businessman and a longtime friend and champion of public education. I've been part of many JCPS initiatives, including serving on the review committee for the Schools of Innovation. And I've been involved with many programs that have been good for our children's academic betterment. I'm part of several groups such as Omega Psi Phi Fraternity's Mental Quality Program and the Metro United Way Black Male Initiative that are working with local schools to connect students, families, and educators to help change the narrative for African American students and deliver more positive education outcomes and futures for African American students, particularly our young men and boys. Also, I, along with Mrs. Alice Houston, CEO and President of Houston Johnson, Inc., co-chair the 15,000 Degrees Initiative that is focused on increasing post-secondary attainment in Louisville's African American community. I come to you tonight to support the Du Bois Academy for Males of Color and the RFP that will be discussed tonight. Your own JCPS Envision Equity Scorecard is noted as a navigation device that seeks to make clear the inequities within JCPS to promote institutional change. The scorecard has made quite clear the intersectionality of poverty and race and education attainment. We all know literacy matters. Your scorecard showed our community that relative to the percentage of students proficient in reading in grades 3 through 8, African American students on free and reduced lunch are at 22%, while their white peers are at 37%. Sadly, the disparities continue when you look at college and career readiness, with African American students on free and reduced lunch at 30% and white students in the same predicament at 46%. Now it is time to call the question, what are we going to do about it? The approach and approaches that we have taken have not turned the tide. There is a need for a sense of urgency, a need for a sense of accountability, and a need for a sense of innovation and a new normal where African American students are not experiencing negative outcomes. This board can make a decision to be a very needed catalyst for change. If not the Du Bois Academy, then what? I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Helton, for being here this evening. Our next speaker is Raymond Burse. Mr. Raymond Burse. Thank you, Mr. Burse, for being here this evening.
Good evening. I'm here to speak in favor of the board approving the contract for a project manager consultant for the proposed W.E.B. Du Bois Academy found under approval of bid tabulation and contract renewal, competitive negotiation for consultant services for the School for Males of Color. I see what is to be done to be not just a program, but an effort to address a real ill, shortcoming, failure, and persistent problem within Jefferson County Public Schools. Every action you take as a board and as a district is important. However, given the current state of academic achievement within the school system and the widening achievement gap, you and the school district are at a crisis, a state crying and screaming for something different, a different approach, a different mindset, and a whole new attitude. Not something different for the sake of doing something different, but to face the need to address a fundamental change which must occur, and if and when it can and will have a far-ranging implications for this community. our community. What is being asked is not an experimental undertaking, but it is taking a step to utilize a program and methodology that has proven itself across this country and even in a little community only 80 miles to our east. You're being asked to address in this community a problem, which the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Education has already singled Jefferson County Public Schools out for. While we, you, and the board and the district and community still have local control, it is time to act. A failure to act positively tonight with vigor, vision, and foresight, with purpose and with wisdom and resolve, is to leave unaddressed one of this system's major challenges and the solution to one that might come from the outside this district. Send the right signal and message now to make a bold statement about what this community is all about and is willing to do to improve itself and the performance of its students. Approve unanimously tonight the item for the Du Bois Academy and also the action to create equity among the JCPS leaders. We're calling on you to act and to look forward to the future with optimism and great expectation. The statement I presented is my statement, and attached to the statement is also a statement from the Psi Boule, a member Boule of Sigma Pi Phi fraternity. And we ask that you take action and take it boldly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burse. Our third speaker is Bruhilda Williams Currington. Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Good evening. I am actually speaking on behalf of Senator Gerald A. Neal, who wanted very much to be present and speak to you himself, but due to a schedule conflict, he could not be and has written a statement and asked me to read it. Dear school board members, first, let me congratulate you on your ongoing commitment to prepare our youth for a productive and fulfilling life. It is clear that your efforts are not limited to the successful matriculation of our youth that are under your care in our school system. They indeed are in part laying the foundation for their life's travel. With this in mind, I appreciate this opportunity to address you in support of the proposed Afrocentric curriculum and focus which seeks to address the achievement gap that persists in our school system. This and similar strategies that expose our youth of color to well-trained educators and strategies that include cultural competence has demonstrated successful outcomes in similar initiatives. The mix of all academic levels, from classifications of general education to gifted and talented with crucial supports, has led to significant outcomes in other programs. The Saturday school component and the inputs of the community, with parent, student, grandparent, mentor, and relevant partner involvement, will ensure well-rounded, confident achievers. We must not, we cannot miss this opportunity to give our youth what they deserve, a substantive and concrete demonstration of support. This is what I believe this represents. Thank you for your confidence and willingness as our representatives to do your part in this endeavor. Sincerely, Gerald A. Neal, Senator, 33rd Senatorial District. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you also to Senator Neal. I know that he's on a panel discussion tonight at the Yearlings Club, so thank you. So that takes care of the speakers for the consent calendar. So we have the opportunity to vote on the consent calendar minus the ones that have been pulled down. That would be item C, which is the approval of job descriptions, approval of bid tabulations, contract renewals, approval of the regular board meeting schedule, and amendment of board policies, hiring certified and hiring classified. So is there a motion to approve the consent calendar, and we will do the other items that I just mentioned individually? Is there a motion to do that? Ms. Duncan, second. Mr. Brady, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So moving on with the items that have been pulled down. Item C, Ms. Duncan, approval of job description.
Well, this item centers around, I guess, John Marshall's position.
Let me stop you. I have talked with Frank Mellon, and in order to discuss this, we need to talk in terms of the job title versus the person
Which
that
was
has
the-
the
yeah,
job.
the
Because
position of
the
the per-
position, absolutely.
Right.
Please.
The-
Am I right, Mr. Miller?
That's correct. Individuals need to be kept out of the discussion.
The- well,
only
the position.
position itself.
The position only.
Well, anyway, it's his position. And my question is the expectation that all chiefs are going to be paid the same amount of money? Is that your expectation, Dr. Hargens?
That, not the same amount of money. Every position has a salary grade. So, for instance, a high school principal is a grade 14. Every high school principal is a grade 14. So we don't pick and choose between which principals are or not. So in terms of a chief position, all the positions, except for 2, are grade 18s. So in one case, it was reviewed and the position was moved from 16 to 18. That's the data position, the chief of data management. So that position is an 18. So this is actually bringing another chief position to the same salary grade that other chief positions have been brought to, with the same process that was used to move that other one from a 16 to an 18. So, so it's about a position and a grade. So I would go back to every high school principal is a grade 14. That's the consistency in high school principals. So as everyone's saying, it's about the position and what grade a position should be.
But how is that amount determined? The decision about now the amount of the salary?
Actually, human resources or finance could speak to it. There is a set compensation structure that is a board-approved compensation structure. So people are moved, as you know, in cells according to that compensation structure. So that is not a subjective determination. That is one done through the process of a compensation structure. So when somebody comes into the district, they're placed in that compensation structure. So what this is about is a job description and a grade and internal equity. Is it internally equitable for like positions that are called the same thing to be at the same grade?
And basically making about the same amount of money.
There is, no, it's not the same amount of money. The chiefs.
But is the goal, I mean.
No, the goal's not. The goal, it's a grade 18 and a person is placed as on a salary schedule at a grade 18. But no, the goal isn't for every person to make the same amount of money. It's to be placed on the salary schedule in a grade 18. So it's based on, and Cordelia, help me, years of experience, rank.
Yes, it's based on, there's 2 schedules. There's the certified and the classified. If it is, the position requires teacher certification, then the first part would be payment based upon the teacher salary schedule. And that is based upon the person's education level and the number of years experience. And then there is an administrative index that is provided. And for certified, the administrative index goes from step 0 to step 5, I believe it is. And according, again, to when they are placed into that position, they would start at step 0 for that particular a new person coming into the position. And then on the classified side, they are also linked to the teacher salary schedule, but it's not based on education levels and all. It is based on your experience, your education in the sense that whether you have a master's degree or something more than what the job itself requires depends on how you also are placed on the step for that particular job. But as the person moves along, eventually after so many years, when they top out, what we say that they're at the top of the scale, the top step, then they would be making the same amount of money as the other person. But the education level matters, and then the year's experience matters.
So as the example I gave, every high school principal is a 14. Every high school principal does not make the same dollar amount.
That's
They're
correct.
placed, as Ms. Harden talked about, on a compensation structure, through that process.
And is there a top-out on this? I mean, because we're nearing, we've been criticized for our salaries, our administrators' salaries. We've had 2 audits that have recommended that we restructure this so that we don't have these kinds of things, and we have such distance between what our administrators are making and what our other staff are making. But is there a top out?
Yes. Every position in the district has a minimum and a maximum, and then there is, of course, steps in between to get there based on your year's experience is what puts you into an additional step. But every position in this district, no matter what your position is, there is a maximum amount that you would get to.
Okay. It just feels so inconsistent to be having these studies, make these recommendations, and then turn right around and be worrying about inflating salaries of our administrative positions and not having anything to do with any of the people. It's having to do with the positions. And that's, it just feels very inconsistent to me.
And I think the challenge is to look at the administrative compensation structure, and that's the challenge. But it's not to look at individual positions. It's to treat under the current structure that we have, to have internal equity and treat people fairly within the current structure. So we don't disagree that, and that's the challenge, is to look at the compensation structure for non-teachers. We've established that, but remember, it's been built over a long time, and it's the one that we currently use.
Mr. Brady?
A few questions about this. Just so I'm level set, all principals are grade 14?
All high school principals are grade 14.
Okay, all high school principals are grade 14. You said that there were 2 positions that would not be going to this particular grade that were chief positions?
Actually, there are 2 positions, that would be called chief. It's chief of equity, diversity, equity, and poverty, and chief of communications. But with chief of communications, remember, materials production went to operations, and open records went to business. So we're left with a very small team. So it's not that we won't review that, but we're left with a relatively small team in communications.
Right.
So the question is so it's not that that won't be looked at, but the one that was looked at and brought forward tonight is diversity, equity, and poverty. So we're not really speaking about any position but the one that was being brought forward. But to answer your question, there are 2 chief positions. There were 3. One was moved to an 18. This would be the second one to be moved to an 18. And there is a third one, which is chief communications. But again, it's a very small team.
All right, so, but we don't, if all high school principals are grade 14, we don't graduate that or grade that based on their enrollment of their high school. So you can be a principal of a high school, have a very small enrollment, or be the principal of Eastern High School and have a larger enrollment, but you're still grade 14. So regardless of the staff that you're actually overseeing or the students that you're actually in your high school, you're still a grade 14. And you're saying that justification here is equity.
No, what I'm saying is that there was one position that was reviewed, and that's the one being brought forward. The other position was not reviewed, was not requested to be reviewed. We didn't review it. I was just giving you a possible reason, which but that's not the position up for discussion, so.
But we're using other positions that aren't up for discussion for justification for doing equity. That's my concern. So
okay.
I'm looking at setting precedent again, that if we are looking at this, and there is a case to be made, that if you're doing this chief position up to an 18, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but you also have to look at your other chief position and also raising that to an 18 And that should be regardless of how many staff that they are overseeing or managing, because that is not the justification that we're being given based on our high school principals. And there could be a very real equity issue regardless of whether or not they request it. But that is a real equity issue that I think that we're setting precedent for right here, which means that we're not going to be raising the salary of one administrator. It's really at this point 2 administrators. Because otherwise, you have an inequity here.
That isn't really the item, and that really wasn't reviewed, so I'm not prepared to, I mean, we didn't review it through
When you
HR.
brought it up, you sent an email to me talking specifically about the chief communications officer, so it was thought about.
I would have to defer to the item that's on the agenda, which is one specific position, which is the, excuse me, the chief equity officer. At some point, if that other position, if the superintendent or Tom decides to bring it to the board, but the item that we're voting on, I appreciate and I understand your comments, but the item that is before us is to bring the position that is currently a 16 to an 18. And I appreciate Dr. Hargan's comments about it. I appreciate how she has explained what it looks like, the differences in grade. And I will say, as a board member who has been concerned about this for some time, that in my opinion, I'm one of 7. It's long overdue. I asked about it when I chaired this board. When I asked about the grades of the people on the cabinet, it was made, Dr. Hargans was made aware of it then. I was told that it would be discussed, or we would deal with it when we had the compensation study. When we were at Fairdale High School, and I asked Tom Hudson, if you find an inequity in something that's on the chart, will we have to wait 2 years for it to be taken care of? You said, no, we will not. So I applaud you. I applaud Dr. Hargans for bringing it to the board. It should have been changed before now, but it wasn't. So it's before us now to make a decision to vote for it, yes or no. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I'm not speaking as the vice chair. I'm speaking of one of 7 that's set up here, that it should have been changed before now. But tonight, the agenda item is to approve it. So we have a choice to approve it, and if there are other comments, I'm welcome to hear those. But if there are no other comments, I would like to hear a motion so we can move this forward. Other comments? Is there a motion? Mr. Brady?
No, motion. You're asking for a motion.
Okay, to move it. Okay, and a second? Is there a second? I'll second it.
I do have a question. Since you brought up the compensation study and that's what we were waiting for. So I know that the people I represent, I get a lot of heat about taking our ASME employees to the mat, you know, taking our lowest paid. I have expressed concerns many, many, many times that when we give a 1% raise to somebody making $15,000 an hour, we give a 1% raise to somebody making $150,000 an hour. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. I have brought this up every time compensation comes up. So now that we have the compensation study, and I have to back up a little bit and say too, I've never, I don't work for JCPS. I'm an elected person to represent the people in my district. And so when we talk about grades, and I can understand it, I mean, I understand what you're saying, Cordelia, I understand the detailed explanation, and I get that. But as a layperson from this world, and I just look at the salaries, it doesn't look like there are discrepancies. There are people at a grade 16 who are making more than people at a grade 18. So those, I guess I don't see it as an inequity as much because I just don't understand the language. And so as the chief business officer, can you help me understand this as an equity issue, not talking about grades, talking about the compensation study? This has nothing to do with any particular position, if there were any administrative position up for, I would be asking these same questions, and I have asked them every single time it's come up.
So currently, we have a motion and a second, and you're asking for explanation about the compensation study. Is that your question at this time?
It is.
Mr. Mellon, do we need to have a conversation about the compensation study? We have a motion and a second on the floor. So the question is about what it specifically, Dr. Wilner, would you restate your question?
I represent my constituents. I need to be able to say why I just okayed another big raise in an administrative category when we already have huge gaps that get wider every single year.
This is a difficult issue. And the
Tom,
way
can you speak in the microphone? We've got
Sure.
a room full of people and everybody wants to hear, please.
Okay, how's this, any better? So I'd say this is a difficult issue, and it's the intersection of an old culture and the way we talked about pay and where we need to go, where I believe we need to go in terms of setting our wages based on competitive market rates. So we are not there yet in terms of setting up the new salary. In the meantime, we're living in this old meaning, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but in a system that has been around for a long time. And people talk about grades and steps and all this stuff. To me, and I'm speaking now for myself, grades and steps don't matter. What matters is how much money you're taking home. You go to the grocery store, you go to the department store, you're taking money, you're not taking grades. And so the way we should be setting it up in the future, and we're headed in that direction, will be to have a unified salary structure where everybody is in a consolidated set of grades. So we're not there yet. So then the issue is, okay, given that we're not there yet, is it fair on this position to hold that position static versus what it might be in the future, and while we wait to complete the study? And I think that's the only way I know how to explain the issue.
So currently, we have a motion and a second on the floor, and the motion is Superintendent Donna Hargens recommends the Board of Education approve the attached job description for Chief Equity Officer. We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hand. Porter, all those opposed? Horn, Duncan, all those abstaining? Wilner, Brady. I am amazed. I am absolutely amazed and disappointed, but I appreciate that this is a democratic society. That's all I've got to say. The next item up is the approval of bid tabulations and contract renewals. The people that brought that down were Board Member Linda Duncan, Dr. Wilner, and Chris Brady.
Okay, I know I basically have just one question because there seems to be confusion around this. Is this, if we approve this bid, are we approving, or whatever contract is being signed here, are we approving a consultant exercise for a year until a plan is made, or are we approving that this group, SNIKE, is going to in fact implement this plan? That's the confusion here. If it's just the consultant part, that's one thing. But if it's implementing the plan itself, we don't even have a plan. And I think it's kind of early for us to say, oh, okay, well, you will go ahead and do the one when we don't even have a plan yet to be able to talk about this. We have Woodson's plan, but we don't have our plan that fits us. And so basically, I mean, if it's about hiring them as a consultant to help us develop the plan, that's one thing. And if that's what we're doing, Dr. Hargens, that's, you know, I mean, we just need for you to clarify that.
Right, and actually, so that's a really great question. I appreciate the opportunity to clarify. What we did was we issued an RFP for exactly what you said, and in order to be perfectly clear, we had a conference call to be perfectly clear. Cordelia, based on the conference call, wrote out specifically that this is a consulting contract for the design and logistics planning for a Males of Color school / program. It's about assisting in the formation, and that there was a paragraph in there that says the intent is to become a best practice demonstration site. It talks about Vision 2020. The design would go through the magnet school's application process. So, and it would be, so this is the first step, exploration and engagement, which is part of the process of the board and of other stakeholders, then to create a design that fits Jefferson County based on the experience, certainly, of what works, but not replicating an exact model. So, so we are, like I said, would attach to the contract exactly the expectation that what we're paying for is a consulting agreement to come up with a design of a school. That, of course, has to go through a process, has to be vetted by interdivisional group or that committee, then, of course, would come to the board. And what we would like in the process is multiple times for the board to be engaged in the discussion of the specifics. So there are no specifics, there is no design. It's consulting to create the design that would go through the magnet school process. And that will take through the end of June through, but it would have to be brought to the board. But you would have multiple chances to talk about it and to see the design as it was being developed. Unlike the schools that did their application process, those schools already exist. This doesn't exist, so we would want to make sure that everybody was included and make sure that it meets the needs of the districts and make sure that it's legal, make sure that it is in line with our student assignment plan and our magnet schools plan. So absolutely. So this would be attached to the contract, to be perfectly clear. I don't know if you want to add anything, Cordelia.
The contract itself, the plan is the consultant would have, working with the community have kind of a plan laid out as of June of 2017 for implementation. Well, let's go back. June, and then one of the things the consultant would be doing, working with many groups, to develop then a magnet application. So this would still have to go through the magnet application process. It would go to the committee to review, and then it would come to cabinet. Cabinet would review, and then if the cabinet felt that it needed to proceed and it has everything in there that we're looking for and can be successful, then it would come to the board as a recommendation from the superintendent to then proceed. We're looking at that. We would hope that would be given to you, assuming that it meets all of that timeline, by September of 2017, so that it is then ready to be opened, and we've determined the location and what is needed for the school to start the school year of 18-19 school year.
And again, I'd emphasize, though, that the board will be part of this engagement process, just like the school communities engaged their communities. So you would be part of the engagement. So it's not that, I want to reassure you.
It's not going to be like tonight when we had 4.
Right. I want to assure you that, right, that you would be involved in this because this is something that doesn't exist already. So, so that's really what we're asking for approval for.
Okay. So this is, and then at the end of that planning, we would make a decision about then how it would be implemented or who would be responsible for implementation.
Right. You would, in fact, approve it as a design to go forward with it. But there's a lot of the journey from where we are, which and that's what this is for, is to get us from A to B to get to a design that you've been a part of creating.
Dr. Wilner.
So this has been confusing. This has been a really confusing process. Dr. Hargens and I spent a lot of our Thanksgiving weekend together for me trying to understand this. And I just want to I really wanted just to have a conversation with my colleagues on the board and to help me understand if my confusion is misplaced or if I'm the only one that's confused. So our board agenda came out on Wednesday, as it always does, at 5 o'clock. It was a holiday weekend. Looked through the agenda, didn't see, there were actually at that time no action items because the magnets was in. So then, I took a quick look through the consent calendar and then found this bid tabulation in item 9M on the consent calendar, along with things like contracts for wrecker service and pest control and warehouse delivery and solid waste removal, and a contract for consulting on a male schools of color. And it seemed so oddly placed. It was so odd, and I thought, we've got 76,000 students in our GAP group. We have 37,000 African American students in this district. And when I look at those numbers that are in the Envision Equity, it keeps me awake at night. It's so disturbing. We do have to do something. And it deserves to have the light of day. It deserves to be talked about. We need to, and I appreciate Dr. Marshall's presentation earlier and the update of the Envision Equity, and seeing that of our suspensions, 66% of them are African American. It's horrifying. It's horrifying when 37% of our students are African American. We have got to do something. The folks who spoke tonight and said we've got to take bold action, that is exactly right. So this was hidden in the bid tabulation, not for a board conversation. And so then this was Wednesday night. On Sunday morning, we finally saw what the proposal was that had been submitted. Board members, unless you guys have, I've still not seen the RFP, but I've seen the proposal, and what the proposal was for a school to serve 150 boys. And so we've got 37,000 African American students. We have over 75,000 kids in our GAP group. We have this huge issue. And so then when I spoke with you again, and the word was, well, what the proposal said isn't really what we're agreeing to. What we're agreeing to is really something much broader. And we'll have a conversation with the vendor that's been selected, and we'll bring information back to you so you have time to review it. This was literally handed to me as I was walking into the meeting. I've not even had a chance to read it. Now, I feel as desperate as anybody can who looks like me about this situation, and I'm willing to take bold action, and I guess place my faith that we're doing something good here. I'm willing to but this is not how. We need better information. We need open conversations. We need to understand what it is that we're being asked to vote on. It's not fair to the community. It's not fair to the kids that we're here to help. So
Go ahead, Cordelia. I think Cordelia wants to add about the RFP process.
Thank you.
Yes, the process of an RFP, and we've had other similar, nothing as probably as that we hope eventually is going to be as impactful as what this will be, but this is just the initial consulting RFP that went out, request for proposal for the individuals that don't understand the acronym RFP. But we've had other consulting contracts in the process. So the RFP is a very fair process. It's a legal document that we follow. It is vetted through the process by several with bids and purchasing, pulling it together. Dr. John Marshall's group, along with some of his individuals, evaluated. Believe there was a team of 6 individuals that evaluated the response. As far as the RFP, the response that this particular company gave was maybe a little confusing, and which is what Dr. Hargens was trying to say, as far as to be clear that it was a consulting RFP. That's what we were contracting for. But in reading, I went back over the RFP myself, and it is clear that it was for consulting services, but at the recommendation of Dr. Hargens, we contacted the individual to make sure she had the same understanding as what this contract was. And at the very first, one of the things that I said was, this is, we want to be clear, this is for consulting. It is not to develop and implement at this point a school or a program, because there are processes that have to follow that our board has to approve. This is strictly a consulting, a preliminary process. And she right away said, absolutely, that is what I understood, that is what I bid on.
I do agree with Dr. Wilner's assessment. I felt like a detective, how I was looking at the consent agenda and just I read every single item, and I was really surprised also to find out what it was. So I had to go to the Secretary of State to find out who SNCCA was, you know, and understand who was submitting the bid, because we didn't have the RFP. And then I had, you know, to extensively, you know, talk to Dr. Hargens this weekend and try to understand what was going on. I am firmly in support of doing this. Met with the NAACP, and I'm really concerned about the legality of not doing a girls' school and doing something for girls. And so I'm concerned about that, but we have to do something. And I'm concerned about the RFP being, you know, like how it's worded, to make sure that what we're talking about here, that is a consultant contract, and the time frame wasn't necessarily correct in the response that we're hearing about now. It seemed like a little different time frame. So, but I will support it. It is a tough decision, as Dr. Wilner makes, because the legal side of my brain wants it to be just right. But the bottom line is, I think with this issue, like Senator Neal said, this isn't, you know, it's about the message that we're sending for our entire community, and especially for African American males.
Mr. Brady.
Thank you. So when looking at this, I agree with my colleagues here that one, this is something that we have to move beyond the status quo. So we need to look at new things and think out of the box and try and, or in actually in this case, imitate a successful program in a nearby city. And as far as conceptually, I get it, and I'm very supportive of the concept of males of color. I do share some of the concerns that Member Horn expressed, especially about parity with a African American female school of color, which I would also not necessarily be opposed to. But here's the rub on that. If we approve this and then we find that we have a Title IX violation, which is essentially what we're talking about here, then the budget, whatever that might be, and I have no idea what that might be 2 times whatever it might be. Now, Dr. Hargens and Dr. Marshall, I met with both of them for about an hour a week after this work session regarding the subject was originally proposed. I asked over a dozen questions. I had a couple of them answered, and I had a lot of "we'll get back to you." And I'm still waiting for "we'll get back to you." Now, part of that, that's in a way is a legitimate thing, because this is kind of what part of this is supposed to be able to answer. So I get that.
That's right.
I still think there are some overarching questions like, how much is it going to be? I need a ballpark, as far as the budget for a school like this. Are we talking about a school within a school? Are we talking about building a school? Those are really important things that I think up front we don't need help or consulting services for that. The board really needs to be aware of. That being said, though, the sense, and I do appreciate the clarity that was given to Member Duncan's question, because I had, and you're not alone, Member Wilner, because I had that same confusion as to what is it that we're really approving here regarding a design consulting position. Okay, I'm fine with that. So I'm ready to move forward on it with the understanding, though, and this is also for those of the audience who still are advocating for this, and I totally get where you're coming from, but it still might be denied, depending on what the details are. I mean, if it's something unrealistic where we're going to spend, $50 million to educate 150 kids, that might grow to 300, that might grow to 450, as what I think the proposal, at least at one point, was stated to me, then that's a really exorbitant expense for that. I don't think that's what the district's going to do, but I don't know that because I don't have the details. So, as far as moving on this, fine with it. I'm going to give you my support, but just understand that this board, and you've heard this theme repeated a few times tonight, needs more information. And the fact that some of the members here, and I share this concern to a degree, I understand why it's in the section it's in, but I do feel that this should have gotten a lot more exposure than it did, and shouldn't be, obscure as far as us trying to find out about this. This is a lot different than warehouse servicing or uniform services. We have to recognize that. I understand why it's in there, but it's different. And we really have to have much more discussion surrounding this. So, thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say that I absolutely support the process of moving forward. If not now, when? Right. It's on us. It's our responsibility. But I'm really curious to understand, as we talk about RFPs, Cordelia, this is a yes or no question. When we issue RFPs, the process is, there are people that make the process work, one of which is Ken Popplewell, who reports to you. And then the process works up through you. So before it came to any agenda item, at some point somebody went check, correct, and an RFP, where would, so far it's yes and yes.
Yes.
The process was in place and followed,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. Yes.
Okay, so as it comes to putting it as a board agenda item, where do RFP agenda items go? Do they go under this category only for tonight only? Or is this the category that we use consistently for RFPs when it says approval of bid tabulations and contract renewals? Is this the consistent title that we use when we receive RFPs?
This is the consistent title for RFPs. This is the way the board approves our requests for proposals.
Okay, so we followed the process. Ken Popplewell was in charge of the process. The document was read, rated, evaluated, goes back, and it comes to the agenda. I agree that it may be difficult to find on the agenda, but where else would we have put the RFP if not under approval of bid tabulations and contract renewals? Where else would it go?
That is the correct place for it to go. Only if it had been at a special request would we have pulled it differently, but that would have been unusual.
Okay, I don't want to get caught up in, I want to first of all verify that the process was followed correctly.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's my first yes or no question, and we did everything we were supposed to do. And I will say, I will end with what I started. If not now, when? If we don't do it, somebody else will. And as it pertains to what the consultant will do in the consulting work, that's why we have a consultant. That's what they do, is consult and answer all the questions. There are many legal documents from Wyatt Tarrant Combs. We've already looked at the legal part of this. So once upon a time, we may have a girls' school, but for right now, we're talking about males of color. And that's what's before us, because this is the time for this to come before us. And I mean, I think I've heard my colleagues say that they support it, and we're getting ready to vote and see. But to not support it is really problematic for me in this day in this time, in this town. I mean, so I'm ready for the motion to move this forward. We have a motion, we have a second, we've answered all the questions. All those in favor of the motion? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item that was pulled down is the approval of the regular board meeting schedule. Mr. Brady and Ms. Duncan. I will say that some folks may want to leave us at this point, and I get it, and I understand. I thank you for being here tonight. But moving on with the agenda, Mr. Brady and Ms. Duncan, conversation about the regular board meeting schedule.
I'll defer to Linda first, or Member Duncan first.
I was just going to say, I totally want to approve the dates. That's not the issue, but for me, I think I would like to pull off the site dates or the places, the sites off Van Hoos for right now until our new board members come on, because we may not want to do all four. They might not want to do all 4 sites away. They might want to do 2 sites instead of 4, or they might want to do all 4. But I really believe that we need to approve the dates. That sounds fine. I'd like to amend that to approve the dates, but leave off the site locations for right now.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, Ms. Duncan, you want to approve the dates as they are, but take the locations off and let that be determined later for the 4
Yes.
sites that are listed on there. Am I clear with what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brady?
I have a motion I'd like to make, but before I make that motion, I would recommend that what Member Duncan just said would be a motion to remove the dates from the calendar.
Right.
That way, that item could be voted on separately, separate from approving the calendar itself, but
Yes.
just that
Right.
that right now that
Right.
your motion would approve, or would you're motioning to strip the places or the off-site locations
Yeah.
from the calendar.
Right.
And replace those with Van Hoos at the moment.
Right.
Is that a
So-
motion?
That's my motion.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
I'm sorry, I don't understand it.
Okay.
I don't know what just happened.
You don't understand the motion?
I don't understand the motion, and I also have a question, and that is, if we schedule schedule at whatever school, Camp Taylor Elementary School, we're going to have a meeting, then it's not a special meeting. But if we later change the location, then it's a special meeting, which means we're
that's a good
locked
point.
into an agenda. So whatever I think just happened, I think I'm against it.
That's something.
The question, and I will let the attorney, but let me say what I think I know as it pertains to meeting locations. Once we approve it, we have the ability to change the date. We have the ability to change the location. We can develop the agenda, but because it becomes a special agenda, once we have the agenda, we have no opportunity to, for example, tonight add something or take something away from the agenda. But we have the date, we have the place, we always have the opportunity to change the date and the location and the time. So does that help?
Oh, well, if we can change that when they come on, that's okay. I just want to be sure we have input from our new board members so that we don't schedule over them without their input.
So the motion that you made was to receive the calendar as it is, to take the 4 locations off? No, that's not the motion?
That's not what I was understanding the motion to be.
Ms. Duncan, would you restate your motion,
Not,
please?
it was basically not to receive, just to strip it off and then vote on the calendar itself, which is
Just the
separate.
calendar, yeah, without the location.
Strip what off?
To strip off the location.
The
The
location.
4 locations.
All
Yes.
locations.
4
No,
locations.
the 4 off-site locations.
The off-site
I think
locations.
I think if you did that, then every meeting next year would be a
special meeting. Okay.
And that has implications for
Consequences.
logistics purposes. My thought about like the smallest number of changes would be to approve as presented, and then if there were those 2 that you wanted to have a conversation with new board members to get their input, only those 2 would be affected. If you stripped out just all of the off-site meetings, that would affect 4 meetings that would automatically become special meetings. Or, so
Yeah.
If we added them back, they would be special meetings at off-site.
right.
Okay.
If you change the site, I think the motion, as I understood it, was to approve the dates, but to say all of them would be held at Van Hoos, and then you decide later to have some of them off-site.
Right.
That would then, as Jonathan said, become a special meeting, and it would create the agenda issue that has been mentioned.
Okay, well, then I'll withdraw that motion.
Mr. Brady, you had something about this item?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion, it'll be the same motion that I made at our last meeting, that we approve the meeting dates for, bring this up, make sure I get this correct, that we approve the meeting dates for January through, hang on, through March as is, and that would be in accordance with what was attached as the meeting dates, where we were originally setting the time and the location. So we approve the meetings as they're presented for January through March, but not approve anything past March from April on until after the new members of the board have been seated.
Will those have
Is
to
that a
be?
motion?
That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Will those have to be?
Is there a second to the motion
No.
before we can have any discussion? Is there a second to the motion? We cannot have discussion until we have a second to the motion. There's no second to the motion, so the motion dies for lack of second.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the calendar as published.
Is there a second? There's a second. There's a motion to approve the calendar as published. There's a second. All those in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Moving on, the next item that for discussion is the amendment of board policies as it pertains to hiring certified and hiring classified staff. And the 2 board members that pulled that down are Board Member Duncan and Board Member Brady. Who would like to go first?
I will.
Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The question I have about this is that this is probably about the 3rd or 4th time that this particular item has actually come up. This is the first opportunity we've actually had a chance to actually vote on it because the administration had kept pulling it. Originally, when this came up, the language on it would have actually kind of excluded a large amount of staff with some of the wording. I pointed it out, it got withdrawn. We had some discussion around it, and the idea behind modifying this, at least from my perspective, was to allow some folks that had made a mistake or something at some point to have a second chance. So, for example, we had a recent teacher grad about a year or 2 ago that came in here, and he had recently graduated with a teaching degree, but we could not could not hire him because of our current hiring policy stated that he had, I think, a felony drug conviction. And that was due to the fact that apparently he, back 5 years prior to that, when he was like 19, he was in a car that had marijuana and it went over across state lines. And because it was his car and he didn't wasn't aware of it or something along those lines, then he was convicted. Now, whether or not he was actually truly guilty, the court said he was convicted, so therefore that's on his record. But that was 5 years ago, and that was a mistake made when he was 19. He is now in his mid-20s or later 20s. He now has a teaching degree. We're new teachers in our system, but I don't want to hold that against someone that they made a bad decision when they're younger versus now when they're an adult, and that was kind of kept in perpetuate, sorry, I can't speak. Keep on and on and on. So, I feel like Elmer Fudd right now. So I don't want to continually ding someone for a mistake that they made a long, long time ago. So my original proposal was that we say, okay, 5 years after a conviction, then we can provide it there, during that time, there's been no other prior convictions or anything along those lines. And then we would, as a district, say, okay, then we're going to give you a second chance. Legal, again, we had a conversation of legal. Legal made the recommendation that there would be maybe that hard deadline or hard, I guess hard setting would not be the best thing. So there should be some type of wiggle room in there. And the proposed language at that point was saying that basically after a period of time, let me see if I can find that right here. This is, yeah, determine after receiving necessary information. Well, all right. Non-sexual conviction is still removed in time and or circumstance that the applicant should be still offered employment. That, according to legal, gave the district a chance to be able to say that time would be considered as far as how long after the conviction and also the seriousness of the conviction would be considered. This new policy that's proposed doesn't really mention that. So there was a story that came out earlier this week saying, oh, well, if you got a drug conviction, we can turn around and immediately hire you. I want to make sure that, and I think this is going to go to Tom's department because it's an HR issue, that we still have the ability to say after a, we'll weigh the, the stance of time and severity of that conviction as to whether or not we're going to hire. Or are we saying, oh, nope, you served your time and immediately, no matter what, you can come on board? I need that clarification from you.
If I understand you correctly, we still maintain the ability to make the decision to hire or not hire, or hire or not.
Okay. So I want the community to understand that we're going to use our professional judgment.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's not something that, okay, immediately upon serving your term, then you can go straight into teaching.
Yeah, no, the process would be exactly the same. People would come in and apply, and they'd go through a process and the committee process, and people would judge based on the circumstances and the individual's case about who they wanted to hire. There's no guarantee of a hire here.
All right, because we really need teachers, and we need teachers that are representative of our students, and I don't want to say to a segment of folks that, oh, sorry, you made a mistake when you were younger, therefore you'll never be allowed in the door. And that's what this is really about, is to give people a second chance.
Yes,
and not hold something against them that they did a very long time ago.
That's correct. And part of the changes that we've been through, Member Brady, had to do with going back and comparing the policy we were talking about to KSBA's recommended policy and making sure that our policy mirrored the districts around us, so we were competitive on this particular issue.
Okay,
which we've accomplished.
And again, I just want to have that conversation in the light of day so the community understands where we're going on this.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Duncan?
I talked a long time to KSBA about this language, and they told me that the language that we have in here is supported by state law, that you can't, those two reasons, conviction for sex offense or conviction for violent offense, those are the only two reasons under state law that somebody can be denied employment. And then under what we've done is we've added this thing about discretion of the superintendent, where the superintendent then could possibly look at convicted people and make a decision. Well, in this case, no, but in this case, yes, which that scares me, because then it becomes inconsistent and you see lawsuit all over that. So backing up to the state law, what it dawns on me is that law is made for adults that generally work with adults. We have adults who work around or with kids. So I think for me, it's a different issue. And you never know what that felony conviction means in terms of violent behavior, for instance, because things get, there are plea agreements so that they plead to lesser offenses than maybe what was committed. So you never know that. And that's putting a lot on a superintendent to say, well, you figure out, this person was convicted of this, was that really what he was convicted of? And to put that on the superintendent and then say, well, okay, in this case, I'm going to let this one go, but in this case, I'm not. I just see all kinds of pitfalls in that. And, for years, we just did felony offenses. We did not hire people with felony offenses. Today, there is expungement. a person who has committed a crime can go through the expungement process, and we'll never know if they committed that crime or not. So to me, I want to keep the language the way that it was and recognize that people who want those second chances can go through those expungement processes and present us a clean record for working with our kids. That's the only way I feel comfortable with this. Otherwise, this just is not comfortable for me.
Ms. Horn?
You know, I don't have a background in HR. It's in a consent agenda. It's a modification of our policies. It kept being on there and leaving, but that doesn't mean that I understand like the why or the like how we're doing this, or because it's buried in the consent agenda. So as we learn tonight, you know, some of us we learn when we listen to people, and we learn and we change our, you know, make our mind up, change your mind. You got to talk. It needs sunlight. You know, that's as a public body. And I don't have enough information on this item. I'm concerned, you know, I want our children to be with employees that, safe, that they're safe. And so I just don't have enough information on this. This is a first reading, so I'm glad it is. But Tom and Dr. Hargens, can you give me information, put this in context? Like, what's going on? Why are we making this change? What's the background? Is this a legal thing that Frank is generating that we need to do? Who generated this? Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this?
You know what I mean?
You saw a slide that came from Dr. Hargens earlier in her superintendent's report. We have 97.5 vacancies right now. We're trying to compete with counties that are all around us for talent. We're looking for bus drivers, custodial staff, paraprofessionals, teachers. So we're in a competitive marketplace to get talent. And so that's number one. And number two, to Member Brady's point, people who have made an indiscretion when they were younger, we're trying to be compassionate about that. People who got involved with kiting a check or something, a nonviolent crime, which I don't approve of. I don't approve of any of these things, but trying to be competitive with the other counties is the reality of the life we're living right now. So that's the reason for the change. As the language stands today, we're at a competitive disadvantage with districts around us.
And so, like, is this the language? What counties have this? Do they have this exact language?
Yes, many. My understanding from Dr. Green, and Frank perhaps has a memory of this as well, is that when KSBA came out with this several years ago, other counties around us adopted directly the KSB language. We, on the other hand, went off and did our own thing, which is our current board policy. And as a result, we've set ourselves aside from the other counties in a way that's made us uncompetitive in this dimension.
And so is this the exact language from that the KSBA recommends? Because we get these policy, guidance
Yes.
from, is this the exact language?
Exact is too strong, but very, very close.
Can you, because this is a first reading, can you please show us the surrounding counties, what their language is, how it differs, and what the KSBA recommended language is?
I would be happy to, well, yes, yes, I can do that. That's easy.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other comments? Is there a motion to approve the amendment of board policies, hiring certified, hiring classified? This is the first reading. Motion, Dr. Wilner, second, Mr. Brady. All those in favor? Dr. Wilner, Mr. Brady, Porter. Those opposed? Ms. Horn, Ms. Duncan. The motion does not pass because we have to have 4 for the motion to pass, so the motion has failed. So it will have to come back in some form or format at some point. But for tonight, the motion has failed. So that takes care of the consent calendar, I believe, and now we're ready to move on to the board planning calendar. If there are things to be added to the planning calendar, only whatever needs to be added to the planning calendar, because we have a number of people that are here to speak, and I want to respect everyone's time so that we can get out of here in a timely manner. Are there things to be added to the planning calendar? Ms. Horn?
I'd like to revive the board policy on magnet education. I'd like to see that at the next meeting if possible.
Okay.
And then potentially, if we can also do the first reading on this hiring classified, if we can have more information.
Okay, thank you. Other things for the planning calendar? Okay, moving on. Board reports, and I did go back and find something that we had discussed but we never approved as it pertained to what our board reports were supposed to be, because I am very guilty of talking about whatever I want to at the board report. So I am saying, you know, for myself, that I have not stuck to what we were trying to do with board reports. And this was something that we discussed, but we didn't actually vote on it. But I wanted to bring it back because I think it's relevant to the work of the board, and it gives us some consistency with the work that we're doing. As we talk about the board reports, the time allocated to board reports should be focused on activities that board members have engaged in that are related to, are aligned with focus areas and strategies within Vision 2020, excellence with equity, rather than on reporting of school or student recognitions or school events. Specifically, board reports provide an opportunity for members to share bridging activities with community, parent, business, and governmental organizations that influence student learning and further the district's strategic priorities. Having said that, are there board reports? Dr. Wilner.
Yes, so a couple of months ago, I guess, I was invited to join the Mayor's Cradle to Career Cabinet, and specifically Karen Wonderland, who is coordinating the Harvard By All Means project, invited me, and then Chair Jones also invited me, or asked that I serve on that cabinet. So I have now attended 2 cabinet meetings, and I've attended 3 behavioral health project scoping meetings. And if you don't know what that means, it's because we're still figuring it out. And it involves, you know, many community leaders, folks from the mayor's office, folks from a variety of health service agencies. The Cradle to Career Cabinet itself involves heads of a bunch of different agencies, and the idea of the cabinet is to bring together the Mayor's Cradle to Career Initiative, the Harvard By All Means project, and also the Say Yes, if that comes through for Louisville, and to bring those 3 initiatives together kind of into one roof. So it's been really interesting. I've learned a tremendous amount of stuff. I particularly learned a lot, and I really regretted missing the last meeting. I debated heavily about missing that meeting and did not take that lightly, but I did have the opportunity to be at the Harvard Graduate School of Education with Dr. Herring and Dr. Chang and Jonathan Lowe and folks from the mayor's office and other community leaders. Sadiqa Reynolds was there. And so it was a great opportunity to come together as a community and to learn more about what this project is. So we are one of 6 cities across the country, Louisville, Oakland, Providence, Rhode Island, and 3 cities in Massachusetts that are involved in this, taking a look at this recognition that despite, you know, 70 years of trying to overcome poverty for educational outcomes, nobody in the country is really doing a very good job at it. And that school systems can't do it alone, and that communities need to come together and bring all the forces to bear for the good of our children. So it was very inspiring, you know, and very grounding. I think that there's no silver bullet. Nobody's got it figured out. People are struggling in communities all over this country. and the idea that our community, you know, is committed to coming together and bringing sectors together is really important. So I have attended these meetings, again, at the invitation of the chair. It became apparent to me, first sort of by hints and then quite explicitly, that I was not just there as a board member, but that other people in our delegation assumed that I was there representing the board, which I'm not, because you guys have not authorized me to do that. So I would like to continue the work. I would like to be part of this cabinet. I would like to have, you know, whatever sort of recognition from you guys to continue and to be able to be there sort of in a more formal role as, you know, the school board member who's part of this process. So that's a request that I have for you guys. I don't know quite how that comes about. And then the second piece that I want to mention is that a really important part of this work, whether it's Cradle to Career by all means or Say Yes, is this notion of shared governance, and where leadership from different organizations, different sectors of the community come together, bring their resources, their strengths, their talents to bear, and kind of pool them. So it's going to mean people, some discomfort probably about people giving up some of their turf, getting out of their lanes a little bit, sharing the resources. And I think it's going to be difficult and challenging, but potentially really exciting work. But I think that's going to be one of the major challenges, is figuring out the shared governance piece. And so I think it's important to put it up front and center early on. So that's the story of my trip a couple of weeks ago, and the series of meetings that I've been to.
Thank you. Ms. Horn, board reports.
I had a wonderful opportunity to attend the Best Buddies event with DuPont Manual's chapter. It was downtown, and it was a celebration of the Kentucky Best Buddies program. We have Best Buddies programs in our JCPS schools. Eastern has a very vibrant chapter. There are a whole list of schools, JCPS schools, that have that. It's an awesome program. I was so inspired. Our students were there with their best buddy, so you can see it online. You can get more information out about it. It's one of those things that it made me think, it doesn't really cost money, you know, because it's basically partnering, you know, a couple students, one with disabilities and one that doesn't. And so it's just a friendship. It's a lasting friendship. So it's a long-term relationship. And it's really can change climate and culture within a school. I can see it happening at the schools, you know, where the program exists. There were a lot of teachers there, like ECE teachers, JCPS teachers. You know, it was just it was a very wonderful thing. It led me to learn about these unified teams. Eastern High School has an amazing, like, unified track team, and the unified track team actually competes with the Eastern track, and they have their own races, and it's something that is exciting, that potentially I thought, wow, you know, that would be great if other schools could do that too. There aren't that many that have unified teams, but it is a statewide thing. And in these times where children are uncertain, we had received an email from somebody at one of our schools, an administrator, and there is very uncertainty for children that have disabilities, for children that are ethnically diverse. It's a time of, people are being discriminated against, and people are doing things that we're hearing from our students. I'm hearing from our students and from parents and from staff. And so it's something that I think I'm really hopeful that we can have some kind of statement, and I'm really excited about the resolution that Ms. Porter and Dr. Wilner brought forward, and hopefully we can make some statement that our children are safe, they're accepted at JCPS, that all children are. I also have had an opportunity to bridge to the business community. I'm a member of GLI. I attended a fabulous workforce development committee meeting with almost 50 people. Christy was there from, our, what's her title?
Career and College Readiness.
Career and College Readiness. She was dynamite. It was just, people were on fire with what she was exciting everybody. I was so, proud to be there and proud to see her and proud of JCPS. She also is visiting the Building Industry Association. I'm a member there, a longtime board member. I'm not currently on the board there. But she also is bridging, JCPS is bridging for, the building and trades. So they really want to start programs. They have programs in other counties. And so we're really excited about working with JCTC and JCPS from that perspective in that life. And so it put me in an opportunity to, Hal Heiner came, and so I got to bridge to the political leadership in our state government, and we had one-on-one conversations about what his passion is for education and workforce development and connecting college. And Hal Heiner really was on fire about college, whether it means a career certification or it meant college going to the university. So really felt there was a lot of synergy there in the community to do a lot of good things for our students as far as, graduating career and college ready. So I think there's a lot of good synergy going on. So I'm very encouraged by my outreach this past month.
Board reports, Ms. Duncan.
Just going to mention our meeting with Commissioner Pruitt and at the Urban League, and that discussion that we had concerning it's not the achievement gap, but it's the achievement gaps that we have and experience within our system. And I think the plans that are going on to help an accountability system that will try and address correcting or closing achievement gaps among all the groups that we're serving. But it was, there weren't many details available yet because all of those groups are meeting and going to be making recommendations about the new accountability system. But it was still a treat to get to listen to people's concerns there.
Mr. Brady, do you have something? Okay, moving on to persons requesting to address the board on non-agenda items.
Vice Chair Porter, could we go back to the board planning calendar to have a motion to approve?
I'm sorry. Is there a motion to approve the planning calendar? Mr. Brady, second. Dr. Wilner, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Just trying to move us out of here. Thank you. Persons who would like to address the board on non-agenda items. The statement is the same. We ask you to have a seat at the table. If you have something to hand out to the board, I ask that you give it to Angie Gilpin. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to address the board. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a bell will sound once. You will then have 30 seconds to finish your statement. At the end of 3 minutes, the bell will sound twice, indicating that your time is up. The superintendent will look into the issues and represent to the board what the recommendations may be or any action to the board. I will say again that we do not call out names. We do not discuss personnel at this time. If it's a personnel issue, we will refer you to the personnel person. We do not call the names of our staff during this time. So just want to be clear because I have the gavel and I will use it if we need to because we want this to be as appropriate as possible. The first person to speak this evening is Deborah Garcia. Deborah Garcia, who's speaking to us about the recognition of nutrition service employees within the ASME union. Ms. Garcia, thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we came tonight, well, first of all, I'm Debbie Garcia. I'm the director of ASME, Council 962, Indiana, Kentucky. We were here tonight for the vote, or the first reading of recognition for our food nutrition service employees. It was brought before the board October 25th, and where they requested recognition out of a group of around 800, 690, nearly 700 of them had signed cards saying that they wished to be represented. On November 17th, I contacted the secretary of where you get on the agenda to speak at the next board meeting. I did that. I told her then what we wanted, that we wanted to be on the agenda so that there could be a vote, and I would send an email out and attach a resolution, which I did within moments of having that phone conversation. So we were under the impression that that's what was going to happen tonight. I know it's been said that it's been a miscommunication. However, I find that very hard to believe. As of yesterday evening, I was hearing rumors that we were not on the agenda. I called to confirm we were on the agenda. I was told at that time, yes, you're on the agenda. You're under number 7, action items. So I had every belief that it was going to be presented tonight. I had already sent out a copy of the resolution and for the vote to be taken. I really would like to request that you guys reconsider and do the first reading, take a vote on the recognition. I don't understand why this would be a complicated process. You surely don't want to treat the food nutrition service employees any differently than any other employees that are already recognized by unions. They're starting to feel that away. They've had someone from employee relations reach out to them, call them to a meeting, telling them that they were going to talk about the ASME accretion process. And when they got there, they found that it was intimidation. They were like, are you sure you know what you're getting into? You know, we feel that this is just a stall tactic for them not to be able to be recognized. So I would like for you guys to reconsider, take a vote tonight on these people being represented. It is clearly their will that they want to be represented by ASME as the exclusive bargaining agent.
Thank you for your comments, and I will defer to Frank Millen, our General Counsel. It is not what we normally do, and we certainly, I would not want to say that we would discriminate against anybody, but I will not say that. So, Mr. Millen, if you would make a comment, please, about she's asking that we vote on something this evening that we've not seen. So would you please respond? Because I want everyone to feel a part of this district. So I appreciate what you're saying, but what you're asking us to do is not what we typically do as a board, to vote on something that we've not seen. So would you please respond?
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Did you receive the email with the attachment of the resolution? Because it was sent to all board members.
I'm not sure that I did, but I won't say that I haven't. So, but again, there's a process to get on the agenda.
We followed that.
And I will take the responsibility because I'm sitting in the chair, but there's a process we have an agenda planning meeting, but I'm not going to go in all that because we got other speakers. Mr. Millen, if you would just speak on this.
Vice Chair Porter, the agenda for this meeting was approved earlier in the meeting. As Superintendent Harkins explained, there was a miscommunication and this item was not put on the agenda. At this stage in the meeting, under Robert's Rules of Orders, it would require a 2/3 vote of the board to put this item on the agenda to enable a vote on it. 2/3 of this board would be 5 members. And that would be a vote simply to allow a vote on this item. And then it would be up to the board members to decide whether they have enough information to vote on it tonight.
So let me be clear on the process that we're doing right now. During this process, we have people that come to us and speak for a 3-minute interval. There is no action that the board takes at this time because we receive the information and typically we don't respond. We just thank you for coming. So because I'm one of 7 members who happen to be sitting in this vice chair, you know, I see there's some uneasiness on people's, but again, there's a process and there's a procedure for life. And when we start straying away from the process and the procedure, but again, I heard your comments about, you know, we're not trying to, everybody's important in the district. Sometimes we don't act accordingly, but, you know, I am a person that would not knowingly discriminate against anybody. So I understand what you're saying, but because people are looking puzzled, I would like for you to make your comments so we can move on. You know, if you all want to vote this is absolutely not what we do during this time. But Dr. Wilner, do you have something to say?
I would, given that Frank says it's legal and it's within the realm of what we can do, I would make a motion to have a first reading, approval of a first reading of this.
I'll second it.
What are we reading?
The resolution?
The resolution that you emailed to us.
Yes. I have a copy if you need one.
So there's a motion and there's a second to read the resolution for the first reading. Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah.
So then what happened?
I think to be clear, the first motion that would be required on a vote is a motion to amend the agenda for this meeting to allow that to happen, to allow that vote to happen on the resolution. And that motion would require a 2/3 vote, which is 5 members.
Is there a motion to adjourn, to amend?
Not yet.
Yes. Sorry. Please forgive me. Is there a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? Ms. Horn, all those in favor to amend the agenda? It's unanimous. Okay, the next step is to, Dr. Wilner's motion again?
A motion to approve the resolution, if that's the motion she wants to make.
First reading to come back for a final vote.
There's a motion to approve the first reading of the resolution. But then after the first reading, there's a second reading, is that correct? For the final. So this is only the first reading tonight, correct?
One question.
Wait, there's a motion, we can't have a question until we have a second. Is there a second to the motion? Second, now we can have discussion.
So, question here is it required to have a first and second reading for this particular item?
Yes.
I'm looking at Frank.
Yes.
Okay. And under extenuating circumstances, the board can waive the possibility of having a second reading, correct?
Again, that would require a 2/3 vote to bypass the second reading.
Okay.
And I think if we could, Cordelia has a concern or Tom has a concern, you would be approving something that you haven't recently seen if you even open that email, or that management hasn't looked at and recommended for you for first reading. So I have to be honest with you, if the email was circulated, management didn't spend time, didn't have a legal review, didn't have an HR review, didn't have a finance review. So normally I'm not uncomfortable, and I want to support what you're saying, but we haven't read the actual document, and that's making me uncomfortable. So, Tom.
I'd add a couple of things. We haven't seen, to my knowledge, we haven't seen the resolution. Number two, we have reviewed the process with Tyson Gorman, and Tyson has some questions about the process and the cards and the language on the cards, and we have more homework to do before we would come forward with this. And again, not against the employees, but
not being supportive.
Yeah,
just wanting to do it the right way.
There are laws and rules and regulations about this, and we need to cross our T's and dot our I's, and we haven't done that yet, just as a matter of time.
We have a motion, we have a second, and we have discussion. So is there a motion to move forward with the first reading of the what is the vote to move forward with the first reading of the resolution?
I just have, so if we have a first reading, there would be an opportunity. You guys have 2 weeks to come back, and if you say we reviewed it and it's terrible, then you don't put it on the agenda. So I'm asking, is that correct?
That would be correct. It would require a second reading unless there are 5 votes at this meeting to waive the second reading.
Or at the next meeting. If it doesn't get a first reading at this meeting, then on the second, 2 weeks from now, at our next meeting, we could have a motion to waive the second reading.
That's correct.
Okay. One other question. Regarding receiving this particular item, well, my question just kind of left me for a moment, but is there a, I guess I'm a little concerned from the fact that this hasn't been approved or kind of gone through, but you just mentioned that it may not be put on, if there's an issue, it may not be put on the agenda. Is there a legal obligation for that because it's already been?
We have due diligence to do, Member Brady, and there are 700 guards or something like that, and we have questions about that. We have them. Are these truly the members? They're not tied into any employee numbers, so we have due diligence to do. I'm not suggesting that we're opposed to this in any way, shape, or form, but we would be remiss if we didn't go through the due diligence to make sure that what the board was getting and the board was approving was legal.
How long have you had these cards?
What, 6 weeks?
6 weeks?
Yes.
All right. So.
Well, what Cordelia has, they can't, Mr. Go ahead.
They were dropped, they were hand delivered to the board meeting on October 25th.
Yes.
And they were asked at that time to be looked at and to take into action to where that our staff can be recognized under ASCME so that we have representation under a union, and that's where we did. That is 690 members, nutrition service employees, out of 800 that have signed those cards. There's a reason why those cards were signed.
Right.
And it's been 4 weeks. And so we've got due diligence to do, and we've been to council to check on it, and that's the process we're in.
Can you get this done in 2 weeks?
We'll give it our best shot. Well, I won't make the agenda on Wednesday to do it.
What's that?
Right?
We can have a placeholder for that, couldn't we?
We could do that if that's your desire. We can do that.
Well,
You could run the names of our employees up against our cards, and you could see that there are employees that have signed those cards of our nutrition service employees.
okay.
And when she tried to bring this to the attention of the labor relations person, he's like, well, where would I get a list of the employees? Really?
So here's the rub, from my perspective on the board, here's the rub for this. I have to not only make sure that I have the ability to look at this, and yes, you may have sent me an email, but that's an email, it has to be within the agenda, and it needs to be not only public for you all to see, but also for the community to see. I've been harping on this from the administration for a very long time of making sure that we have adequate amount of time to be able to review this, not just for me as a board member, but also for the community. That's not a one-way street. It's got to be that standard applies to everything. So as much as I, would, providing all things are equal and everything has been checked out, and it wouldn't be a problem for me to recognize you, the fact that I don't have the ability to actually look at this is problematic and is a showstopper for me. Which also means it's a showstopper for this vote, because if one person votes, then that's it.
Right.
And so understand that that's also the source of my second question of, at the next meeting, can we drop the requirement for a second reading? So, which will, again, at that meeting, I understand will have to be a vote taken, and 5 people would have to vote for it. I understand that perfectly clear. So.
But he has to provide the information.
But that information has to be done in 2 weeks. So there's the other thing. You've had it for a long time, at least 4 weeks. I highly recommend that someone burn some midnight oil and get this, because this should have been done. I remember them coming and presenting it. I keep looking for this to be on the agenda. It hasn't come yet. I don't think it's unrealistic to look for, for existing employees. So that's my opinion. So that's where that's my this one board member, and it's going to be up to the board to make if they want to direct that, but this board member really suggests that come our next meeting, I expect there to be an option here.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Dr. Wilner, please make your comments.
Absolutely.
short.
I
And
appreciate-
Let me just say, this is not what this section of the agenda is about. It's
Right.
for speakers. It's not for action. Again, you know, we changed the rules for some, but not for all. So please make your comment, and we have a motion on the floor to vote up or down, please.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk it through, to have the conversation. I'd like to withdraw the motion.
You withdraw the motion, so the expectation is that at our next meeting, we have one meeting in December, that we will have something before this board, that we will have an opportunity to look at prior to that time for a reading at that time at our December meeting. Again, I regret that this has happened the way it has happened, but there seems to be a plan in place to resolve
you.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here
so
tonight.
much.
Do you need me to send this to all the board members?
Well, it would be helpful if you give the copy to
Sure.
Angie, please, and then we will have it, and then she can see to it that we get it as well. If you want to resend it to the board members, you certainly may do so.
She was
Thank
on
you so
email.
much. Our
Thank
next
you.
speaker is Angela Minter. Angela Minter. And this will be 3 minutes, please. No work thereafter, please. Thank you, Ms. Minter, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the opportunity to address the board this evening. Again, my name is Angela Minter, and I'm talking about the topic of sex education in the Jefferson County Public School System. I was made aware that a group called Louisville Sex Ed is now pushing for comprehensive sex education in K through 12 in Jefferson County Public Schools. It is extremely important to note that this group has listed as its primary supporters the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, and other pro-abortion organizations. Planned Parenthood is the leading abortion provider in the country, and they're also the same abortion organization here in Louisville that began doing abortions last December without proper license or hospital admitting privileges in the case of the mother having an emergency during the abortion procedure. And they actually performed 21 abortions during that time. They averaged some 337,000 abortions per year. I also understand that on October the 25th, the Board of Education had the Elson's proposal as an agenda item during a board working session. For one, I want to voice my strong opposition to this proposal for comprehensive sex education in the Jefferson County Public School System, which would result in sexualizing our youth. And I want to allow these organizations, and this would also allow these organizations to push their pro-abortion agenda. Who would be their market? Our children. I also understand that there is a mandatory training for health teachers that is scheduled for tomorrow on the 3 R's curriculum and on the OWLS curriculum for youth to be tied to the SECAS and also the youth advocating for youth and SECAS. There are also 2 more pro-abortion comprehensive sex education groups which promote condoms, contraceptives, and abortion over sexual risk avoidance message. I, like you and many other parents and concerned citizens in our community, some of whom are seated in the audience tonight, want to see our school communities working together for our children and their safety. However, I am concerned that a particular approach to sex ed is being mandated and scheduled with minimum or no input from key stakeholders, including parents, the very ones that we encourage to be involved in the children's education. It appears that the Jefferson County Public School System has decided on a particular approach to sex ed without considering all the evidence and without consideration of parents' rights. As a parent who has children that have gone through the Jefferson County Public School System, one graduating from manual and the other from male, I encourage you to delay any sex education proposal at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Winter. Our next, speaker, my goal was to get us out of here tonight, folks. Please help me with that, please. Our next speaker is LaVon Brown. Same topic, sex education. LaVon Brown. LaVon Brown. Our next speaker on the same topic, Tom Beck. Tom Beck. Welcome, Mr. Beck.
Good evening, and thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to approach the board. I too would like to discuss the topic of sexual education. My name is Tom Beck, and I'm a physician. I've lived and worked in our Louisville community now for over 25 years. I spent the first 13 years of my career delivering babies as an OBGYN, and most recently, these last 12 years as an anesthesiologist. My wife and I are currently raising our 4 children. We have 1 in college, 1 in high school, and still 2 in middle school. I read about the Louisville Sex Education Now agenda in a recent Courier Journal article, and also have learned, as was mentioned, that this group is a coalition of Planned Parenthood and the ACLU, among other groups. And I believe that they have made a presentation to our board to initiate a comprehensive sexual education curriculum with guidelines stretching across all grades, all schools, even down to the kindergarten level. Just last month, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services released a report, and it showed that in comparing comprehensive sexual education curriculums, that up to 80% of students involved in comprehensive sex ed programs either fared no better and often worse than students who had not participated in such a program. These programs include explicit discussions of varying forms of sexual behavior, and as mentioned, often abortion is presented as a normal and even a healthy option. It's become apparent also that as an unintended consequence of such normalization of teen sexuality, that that when questioned, 1 out of 4 teens that went through such a program actually felt pressured to initiate sexual activity. I realize that as a parent, we would probably, across the board, ask the schools for their help in helping to educate our children about sexual health. But I also believe that as a parent, we should be able to maintain a principal role in this process, and as such be invited to and involved in the selection of what curriculums might be proposed to be taught. I would ask that the board reject any current proposals of the Louisville Sex Education Now Coalition and allow for more transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. Our next speaker is Anitra Jones. Anitra Jones. Welcome, Ms. Jones.
Thanks for allowing me to speak with you all today. My name is Anitra Jones, and I am a single mother. I have 2 children currently in the JCPS system. I have an 11th grader and a kindergartner. And so I understand that this new curriculum is going to be implemented possibly soon at JCPS. As of right now, my daughter has not been exposed to this comprehensive sex education, but she has some friends that have. So I guess my main concern is I'm wanting to know if the approaches that are going to be given in the school, if they're going to be either in line with or in direct opposition to what I'm teaching at home. And I understand that many kids may not get sex education training at home or have conversations, but I do have that. And so I'm opposed to something being presented that is going to be in direct opposition to what I'm teaching at home. And also, I have had to provide pastoral care to several teenage girls who have been exposed to the comprehensive sex education, and they've engaged in safe sex based on the education that they've received. And some have caught STDs, maybe not all, none have been pregnant. But the main thing is that after these girls have sex, they are dealing with suicidal issues when they've given their body to a boy on Monday, and then on Wednesday, he has a new girlfriend. That's their Woman Crush Wednesday on social media, and I have had to personally counsel teenage girls who have dealt with suicidal ideation and who have attempted suicide, all based on them giving their bodies to a boy. And so I personally would prefer some type of sexual risk avoidance program that would actually focus more on building their character up and teaching them to become emotionally stable, instead of actually teaching them how to have sex safely and how to use abortion as just another method of birth control. So I just ask that JCPS, on behalf of the parents, that we would be able to see what is going to be presented to our children and either have a say in what's presented, or have the option for our children to opt out of being exposed to this type of education. It could possibly do more harm than good, and I don't need to be coming head on with my teenage girl any more than what I already am. So I do ask that this is postponed. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Greg Williams. Greg Williams, welcome, Mr. Williams. Topic, sex education. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My name is Greg Williams, and I'm with the Kentucky Marriage Movement, but my role and interest here is as a former director of a federally funded sexual risk avoidance program here in the state of Kentucky. Thank you, Superintendent Hargens and board members, for allowing me the opportunity to share thoughts regarding sex education in the schools and to serve you as board members here in Jefferson County. Based on my experience of nearly 10 years, I simply want to share the points and concerns that I've seen before, over and over again. With the testimony we've heard, with the groups that have been connected this evening, there is certainly a question of full disclosure, at least among these parents and people in the community. Somewhere there's a question of full disclosure. In my experience as a former director of a very successful federally funded state program, every time an attempt was made to sneak a program in to a school, it involved a comprehensive sex education program. There never was a situation where a sexual risk avoidance program tried to sneak in the schools. Transparency encourages parent, stakeholder, and community involvement and trust. Lack of it destroys it, as I know you as board members know. Comprehensive sex education affiliates and connections have been made tonight. The 3 R's is from Advocates for Youth. AL is with Sexuality Information and Education Council of the U.S., or SIECUS. These groups have always pushed for and fully supported comprehensive sex education with very little, if any, sexual risk avoidance. It's always been sexual risk reduction with consistently bad long-term outcomes. If parents want this, then so be it. But make sure that they are involved and all disclosure has been given to them and they have input. As Dr. Beck eloquently shared, comprehensive sex education programs have been minimal at best, and in several cases have shown negative effects according to Health and Human Services, the federal program that supports these, and who supported the study that said they're not working. Parents and stakeholders need to be involved, and they are, as evidenced by nearly 2,500 now signatures on a petition that I believe you received, this crowd and speakers tonight. Public schools are to reflect and incorporate this. Please don't cover up and fight it. I'm an old country boy who grew crops, and I know this very simply, that you can't bring good fruit from bad seeds. There's no doubt that the ELSIN agenda and Advocates for Youth SIECUS approaches with direct connections and support from Planned Parenthood are comprehensive sex education, and that's bad seed. The outcomes have shown it. I think it would be wise to cancel trainings and related promotion of the ELSIN agenda until parents and stakeholders can become more informed, educated, and involved, and I believe you desire that as well. In particular, maybe a curriculum review team on issues related to sex education. Your community has spoken in many ways. The issue and these people are not going away because children, their children and futures are at stake. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Our next speaker is Moesha Ohanian, Moesha. I'm sorry if I'm messing this totally up. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Gay Edelman. Welcome, Ms. Edelman.
Dear JCPS, on the topic of continuous improvement, I bring you a question, a suggestion, and an invitation. First, the question. In May of 2014, State Auditor Adam Edlin published a report that found a few areas where improvement in our district was recommended. It found JCPS ranks at or near the bottom in teacher staffing and expenditures for instruction, while ranking the highest in categories of administrators, support staff, and instructional aides. Specifically, he found the district pays 369 administrators more than $100,000 a year. JCPS also has had the second highest student-to-teacher ratio, ranked the lowest in instructional spending, while ranking highest in administration and operations spending. It found that JCPS students face more restrictions on access to textbooks and had the lowest textbooks budget. More than half the teachers said students couldn't take home textbooks. It also found inadequate instructional resources for all students. 90% of teachers spent personal funds to supplement classroom resources. So my question is, how are we doing with these numbers today? Next is my suggestion. My suggestion, also in Edlin's audit, was the recommendation to add an at-large board member. As a district of choice, we have a need for broader representation. I believe it is time for our school board to move forward with this recommendation and add not one but two new positions in order to keep an odd number for purposes of voting. Have one of those members be from the community at large, and one of those members be a student voice. Third is my invitation. Having attended the work session on charters yesterday in Frankfurt, I found the presentation to be factual, but I felt the facts were presented in a way that leaned more toward favor of charters and may have omitted some of the risks and downsides some of the groups opposed to charters have identified. This is concerning and presents an opportunity for education of our community members if we want to ensure legislation that will not undermine the success of our existing public schools. Because legislation can move quickly and the topics can be complex, it is imperative that we begin now educating and informing our community about trappings and pitfalls of charter school legislation and learn from other states that have gone before us. Our organization is part of a coalition with Save Our Schools Kentucky, which is a pro-public education advocacy group that seeks to educate and inform our community about pending charter legislation in our state and to empower and mobilize constituents to communicate concerns with their elected officials in order to ensure quality legislation. On January 5th, we will be hosting the first of many screenings of a film called Education, Inc. We also invite other organizations to join in the coalition for a more informed and mobilized community. If members in the audience would like a copy of the flyer, please see me afterwards. Since I have a little bit more time, I think I'm going to ramble on a little bit. It is important that we make Louisville and Kentucky special. The things that make Louisville and Kentucky special not be lost with any charter legislation, and I would like to also recommend these topics be included with your legislative agenda. For example, SBDMs should be part of every public school. In addition, charters should not take funding from public schools. These should be topics on our agenda. JCPS is already a district of choice, so clarification of what problem we are trying to solve should be communicated to our legislators. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bo Johnson. Bo Johnson. Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you for being here. Our next speaker is Kathy Young. Kathy Young. Thank you, Ms. Young, for being here.
Good evening, members of the board, superintendent. I appreciate your giving me the opportunity to talk this evening. I'll try to be brief. I'm a mom here in Louisville. I practice law, and I'm also mentoring a student at Westport Middle School. And I have grave concerns about the LSEN program that has been proposed. You know, sex education has been a part of the curricula in our public schools for many years, but yet our teen pregnancy rates and our STD rates continue to rise. And that is because although LSEN is saying that it's a different approach, It's really not a different approach. It's the same wink and nod, don't have sex, but we know you're going to do it and this is how you do it. We need to have a different approach. The curriculum outlined by LSCN on its website is about, a quote, providing age-appropriate and medically accurate information about human sexuality and the effective use of contraceptive and barrier methods. And my question is, who decides what's age-appropriate? There's a lot of vagary in LSCN's approach and a real lack of transparency. Why are our teachers being instructed on how to teach this LSCN approach without having undergone an extensive vetting and curriculum review process? It's no coincidence that the sponsors of this initiative include Planned Parenthood and ACLU. Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion provider in this country. 1 in 3 abortions is performed by Planned Parenthood. They are incentivized to bring women into their facility and abort their children. We don't want these people teaching our children sex education. Abstinence programs have been effective all across the country, be it Not Me Now in New York, to postponing sexual involvement programs in Georgia, to teenage family life education progress in the western states. These programs testify to the efficacy of abstinence-based programs. Programs like LSCN give only a passing nod to abstinence and advise children, if you have sex, here's how you do it. They do nothing to stave off sexual activity among our youth. The cycle of teen pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases continues. I am imploring you, members of the board, please don't give keys to the henhouse to these foxes. Think very carefully and work transparently to develop a sex education program within our county that meets the needs of the children and their parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dana Webb. Dana Webb. Thank you, Ms. Webb.
And thanks to all of you for serving, and I'm glad Mr. Gies is here tonight. He'll be on board with you soon. Well, I'm going to echo the last few speakers, and I sent you all an email around 5:30 this afternoon using the email addresses from your website, with the exception of Dr. Hargan's. I'm sorry I couldn't find one for you, so I'll be happy, or maybe one of you all could email mine, forward it to her. I just want to thank you for your service, and I know that you're considering the LSCN and Planned Parenthood curriculum. And Dr. Beck spoke earlier, mentioned the HHS study, which showed that it is a failure. The comprehensive sex ed programs are a failure, and I did include a link to an article in your email on the HHS study, as well as some other articles. Planned Parenthood is an industry, and they do benefit from promiscuity. They benefit from teen pregnancy, unfortunately. At least 10 states have moved to defund this scandal-plagued organization, and a lot of municipalities as well, at least 10 states. That was the most recent data that I saw from February. I don't think that Planned Parenthood and their supporters can be trusted to educate vulnerable young minds and on issues of morality. So I'm hoping that you all will not permit comprehensive sex ed, but will look for a good alternative, because we have a captive audience in the classroom. And we as parents, and I'm a grandparent of a JCPS student, we want to partner with you guys, and we want to work together to bring about something that benefits our children. I'm hoping that you will cancel the LSCN sex ed training session for the teachers, which is tomorrow, I understand, and that it won't be implemented in Jefferson County Public Schools until you all have a chance to hear from the community and research some good risk avoidance programs. And I just hope that we do not partner with such an organization. They don't have a good history, and we know their founder, Margaret Sanger, had some very unique views on minorities, and she didn't care for them and wanted to initiate genocide, but of course they still honor her in some ways, and that's unfortunate. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Carol Brethschneider.
I'd like to withdraw my name because it's been so well said with people ahead of me.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There is no executive session this evening. Before, I guess I would like to thank everyone that has come to participate this evening on various topics. I've received numerous tweets since sitting up here about my comments tonight, and that's okay. That's okay. I have to thank everyone for being here, but I also have to thank and say that every person in this district matters. Every person in this district matters. And what we do for one, we should be consistent. That's all I will say. And I thank everyone for being here tonight. And is there a motion to adjourn? Ms. Horn? Mr. Brady? It's unanimous.